data about investigation they have done throughout their life, and something of the greatest relevance, and that made headlines, images, memes all over the world. It was the presence of two, let's say, mummies of unidentified beings can be installed. They were here in the Chamber of Deputies. And those unidentified beings, of which at that time a broad explanation was given by those who had studied them about its origin, its genetic composition, the way they were found, and others. They come, or their origin traces back to Peru. Leonara presents today with about the topic that they are going to talk to us and delve into this. But in addition, this is not just left in the talk, the presentation, the comments, the rebuttals, and counter-rebuttals on the topic, if we have not taken it to the legislative field. And today I am presenting an initiative to reform the transparency law, where we can establish, unlike in other countries in Mexico, the information, any information related to these anomalous phenomena that are within the power of the state should be completely public. Is restricted, and there are precedents. Jaime Maussan himself conducted a transparency investigation through the channels and procedures established by INAI, the National Institute of Access to Public Information here in Mexico. And through this legal exercise, gathered evidence of state entity advertised recordings about phenomena. Based on that precedent, we consider it is necessary to reform the law so that it becomes something public. Any data, report, video. A form of knowledge that is held by some authority of these possible phenomena. Unidentified anomalous. Today we will present it. We are going to continue with this process. In the Chamber of Deputies, there are many relevant issues, and we are attending to everyone.
Today is being discussed
and in
here.
the plenary, nothing more and nothing less than the federal expenditure budget. We are there. We are in this forum. We will return to debate. All topics are relevant, and there are people who are interested in each and every one of the topics. So, again, with much respect, we welcome the personalities who accompany us to present their research work.
Your personal experiences, your
life experiences, scientific data, and the system are
welcome.
Thank you very much, Deputy Sergio Gutierrez Luna. Next, we give the floor to the journalist and director of the period.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to our friends in Acapulco. All our solidarity and thoughts are with you. We know you'll get through this challenge that life has put us through. It's an honor to be here today in this prestigious House of Representatives to present three topics of great relevance and transcendence for Mexico, Peru, and the world. Latin America and the world. Firstly, I want to highlight the process of legislative initiative for the unidentified anomalous phenomena that will be approved in the coming days. Secondly, I want to emphasize the guarantee that the information generated both from the Mexican territory about this phenomenon, it cannot be hidden or reserved, and the authorities will be obligated to inform the people of Mexico. As just here, the Deputy Sergio Gutierrez Luna can express himself about whom it is and belongs, and has the paternity of this initiative. First, I want to tell everyone, around the world, there isn't any state on the planet that guarantees absolute transparency regarding this unidentified anomalous phenomenon in their skies, and that must be considered, as it really puts Mexico at the forefront of this phenomenon's research. And it's something unprecedented, but we hope it becomes an example in many places around the world. Thirdly, I want to highlight the progress in studies of humanoid beings found in Peru, as well as the introduction of 2 new species, along with their respective studies that we're going to have today. That is, it's not a species. So far, there are 3, and I want to tell you something more. They are not the only ones, there are more. The discovery is much bigger than we thought. All of this is possible thanks to truth-committed people like Congressman Sergio Gutierrez Luna. Because thanks to your conviction and bravery, such extraordinary advances that will position Mexico could be achieved as one of the countries at the forefront in the search for a new reality. Mexico will thus be one of the first countries to accept the anomalous aerial phenomenon in its kings. This historic decision will allow keeping the people of Mexico and the world informed about what's happening in the skies, a new reality. It's also important to acknowledge Gaia.com's support, a company from the United States. Without Gaia, it could not have been done.
Thank you very much.
Sorry,
Goodbye.
this extraordinary investigation.
Greetings and until next time.
Okay.
Their support was decisive, not only for conducting field work, but also for obtaining scientific research. Likewise, I want to express my deep gratitude to the University of Ica in Peru, and in particular to its brave rector, Professor Jorge Eduardo Moreno Legua. He has faced immense political pressure, and of the scientific community, and yet decided to bring the truth to light. Your commitment and determination to overcome adversities is worth it. They appreciate our recognition and gratitude. Archaeologist Thierry Jamin also deserves recognition. Director of the Inkari Institute, who initiated the research work of the extraordinary discoveries conducted between the Nazca and Palpa communities in Peru. Today we know that the discovery of desiccated beings of humanoid characteristics, it's much bigger than previously thought. These discoveries challenge us to rethink our conceptions about life in the universe, our own roots as human beings. The implications of these findings are profound and invite us to reflect on our responsibility on Earth. Sorry. This is an important and exciting moment. We have in our hands physical evidence that could change our perception of the world. September 21st, 1987. President Ronald Reagan said at the UN, "Perhaps we need the threat to our world from a race originating from another planet, then disputes between nations would disappear." I believe that we do not need a threat. The mere fact of understanding that we are a unique race without color or religion distinctions, it would invite us to stop killing each other, as it is happening now in the Middle East. In Russia, the truth will set us free. And by accepting the possibility that there were beings with humanoid or bipedal characteristics, thumbless didactic shots will open doors to knowledge and understanding. We are facing a profound change. I want to invite the scientific community to, instead of attacking us or to demonstrate to those who have already done the necessary tests, Let's investigate seriously. We need to leave behind the damages, the prejudices, and unfounded fears and embrace the opportunity to learn and grow as a society. Some resist accepting the evidence and witnesses, testimonies demonstrating that times are changing. However, neither you, the detractors, nor the investigators are bigger than the truth. In conclusion, we are witnessing a crucial moment in human history today. The presentation of desiccated beings with humanoid features challenges us to expand our horizons and questions our deep-rooted beliefs. I once again thank the University of Ica and the Mexican authorities for their courage and leadership in this process. I want to report that the discovery in Peru is much larger, as we had already said, than what was considered. In the coming weeks, attempts will be made to prevent the information provided here from becoming known. With crude efforts, they will try to discredit the evidence that will be scientifically substantiated here. Any effort in the contrary sense must be sustained with the same scientific basis as will be done here. The truth is only one, and will be on the side of whoever demonstrates it best. Shortly before this public hearing took place, we found out that the bodies recently seized at Lima Airport by the Ministry of Culture are being destroyed, with the sole aim of demonstrating that they are armed forces. Later on, we will have detailed information about this sad chapter. It's necessary that we all come together, researchers and institutions, in search of transparency. Our children and those yet to be born deserve it. Thank you very much. Subtitles made by the Amara community. It is very important and funny to tell you this. Subtitles by the Amara community.
Yes, Mr. Jaime, thank you very much. As agreed, you will monitor the program, if you please.
Titles made by the Amara or community.
We invited to the Presidio Jose Angel Guevara, air traffic controller,
Subtitles made by the Amara or
who
community.
will bear witness for us about the intense activity that's happening right now in the skies of Mexico. Go ahead, Jose Angel, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good
Greetings.
afternoon, everyone. Deputy Sergio Gutierrez Luna, thanks to you and the other representatives, the kindness of receiving us at this second public hearing for the regulation of unidentified anomalous air phenomena, or UAF for its acronym. Thank you very much for being here with us, ladies and gentlemen. For us, it is a great pleasure to be in this parliamentary representation, and for me personally, as a Mexican, a great honor. I stand before you as Mexico's air traffic controller to share some data and documented evidence of sightings and reports of unidentified anomalous phenomena. These days, an unusual phenomenon is occurring in the skies of our country, but I personally don't believe it. A server who works as an air traffic controller for the Mexican Republic in the en route radar category, I have been able to witness through the many reports and sightings.
Thanks for watching the video.
It was an unidentified air number, an unidentified number from the guild that makes up the aviator pilots who fly daily
Through the airspace.
the nationals, whom I consider and can confirm to be highly professional and have a respectable credibility, accompanied by an undeniable seriousness As usual, reports have often included visual observation of luminous or incandescent phenomena. And during nighttime flights, sometimes described as fireballs, and at other times reported in small flakes of numerous luminous elements that filled the sky, showed up in the view of the crew in the airplane cabin en route, or in other words, in straight and level flight. The said sightings, they'd have described the phenomena in question as lights with unusual glares and flashes, unlike what would be a plane or commercial aircraft. In addition to performing maneuvers that exceed movement capabilities on the flight of any known aircraft or those that defy the laws of airplane aerodynamics. As far as I am concerned, when I've been informed about the event and asked about the lights seen based on their position and direction provided by the pilots in relation to the observed phenomenon, this one or these do not appear on the radar screen as known or identified traffic, which baffles and astonishes both pilots and air traffic controllers. A fact that further increases the question of this extraordinary phenomenon. It is worth mentioning that these type of events are not exclusive to the present. During the 28 years I've been in aviation, I vaguely remember receiving one or maybe two similar reports to the previous ones during my career, but without a doubt, this 2023 has been a year with a high number of sightings.
Thank you.
Given the above, next I'm going to show you evidence of what was previously described in the audios, please.
There is traffic at position 3, exactly 5 miles at 3:20. I don't know if you can see it, if it's clearly visible.
So the declack is no more about laughter.
And I see that it's the iPhone 4, very high one. Yellow color. Wow. Well, I have a notification of bear this. I'm not planning to be a governor. And how many objects appear? And they contain like an 8 ANG that they pay you in this like training. Tulio Street. I've fallen in the air with the silence. I've fallen in the air with the silence. And I have to see a leading traffic on my left. The truth is that it needs to be calculated, but I estimate that I didn't kill Psycho Maxon, who is the one who threw it to Psycho Maxon's radar, which was to the left. A male is to her left, a killer. 14 miles, geez. I have no reported traffic. No alien observers. The closest traffic, if you can say close to you, it's about 123 days. More information. Alimenta.com. Thanks. It's a demon wait. Good night. Contact at 380. This is the stubbling staff. The hard part, gentlemen, would be bigger than the mound. Or something like that. I was static. The lights, and there were lots of lights. Yes, kilometric to the 5 or 12, yes. That's right. Thank you. From a traffic to the exact presupposition.
And I hope that with this brief appearance we have from you. In this enclosure, this information is useful to achieve the goals. Let it be sought in this hearing, and let the reforms and addition to the Mexican Airspace Protection Law on the anomalous phenomenon be approved. Identified. On my part, I thank you very much for your attention. I await your orders. Thank you very much.
A question, Angel. Are you saying there's more activity in Mexico's sky?
Subtitles made by the
Yes, Jaime. As I said on some occasion, I had one or two a long time ago, but this year, 2023 in particular, the sighting report has been exploded exponentially.
Goodbye. Who do you attribute it to?
Well, as you tell me, they are at least unidentified phenomena. But on our country's radars, we only see the traffic that aims to see through a transponder team. We can't see flocks of birds or bad weather. We only see planes that show up on radar when something unidentified appears. Well, we can't know what it is for sure, but the pilots describe it as elements or extraordinary things that defy any law of gravity or physics or aerodynamics.
A recordi skepta controlli.
No, there's always a supervisor on shift.
It remains as a comment.
It was like a comment. We all just looked at each other. It's a very amazing and bewildering fact. And well, these audios I borrowed to share with you, but currently there is no investigation file. There is a record of all this type of... Remember, not only me, many colleagues have had this throughout the year. Thank you. You're welcome.
Would it be advisable to establish some kind of official investigation office?
Yes, it would be advisable for you to document when such events occur and keep the classified recordings in plain sight for any kind of inquiry.
Thank you.
There is nothing, I repeat.
Some videos, not sure if they can be played. That's it, and you bear with of recent, very notable sightings regarding these anomalous objects and airplanes. Subtitles made by the community of Amara.org.
Thank you very much. That's some strange stuff.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's not a plane, it's not a drone, it's not a balloon. Obviously, it's an anomalous object. And I believe this was recorded from an airport, a passenger. The object strolling over the airport runways, showing that they are constantly near planes and pose a real danger, as José Angel Guevara might recognize, because they have to deal with that constantly. So I believe that to Deputy Sergio to consider with these modifications to the laws that some kind of office that investigates this phenomenon. Well, now let's go with the lawyer from Peru, Dr. Rafael Arcangel Berrocal Ramos, who will present a lecture, Legal Loopholes in the Management of Biological Beings, Not Human.
Think so.
A greeting.
Good afternoon to all men, women, to the brave Deputy Luna. Many thanks for opening this new window of human challenge on this planet. Today we are here for it is transcendental that has captured the imagination of humanity. For decades, the existence of non-human lives and unidentified objects, also known as anomalous non-human bodies. It's time to address some legal gaps in relation to the scientific studies of these phenomena and work together to promote a law that allows us to know the truth and leave a legacy of knowledge to the future generation. Is because we believe that the fundamental human right of knowing the truth and explore the vast universe in which we find ourselves, we inhabit for centuries. Our curiosity and thirst for knowledge have been driving forces, essentials that have driven our progress and development as a society. However, in the case of anomalous beings, there is the possibility of non-human life in which we face a legal vacuum due to a lack of regulatory framework that allows us
And guide
this
me.
research with legal backing from the states of the world's countries as we look at the stars, our children and grandchildren. They also do it, and they have every right to know the possible truth hidden beyond our planet. It is crucial to promote a solid legal framework that encourages scientific research in the field of healthy bodies, non-humans, with the aim to explore, better understand our place in the universe, and ultimately to offer you a clear vision about our potentials, interactions with unidentified strange beings in the past, in the present, and in the future. Of course, there will be risks and challenges, as many scientists have done and suffered. And they suffered, but they did succeed. Catapult the ideas. Survival in our land. We know from testimonies the existence of non-human visitors. But what do we do as a nation? What do we do as a state? What do we do as a country? Just simply, we do not support scientists for the proper handling of non-human biological remains. This keeps our humanity deeply immersed to the ignorance and unawareness of new sciences or superior beings strange to our land or civilization. It would be a great challenge for humanity to absorb its knowledge and scientific advances for the benefit of our humanity on our planet Earth. Therefore, it is important to promote the enactment of a law that regulates scientific studies. Not only will allow us to advance in our understanding about these mysterious appearances or visitors to our land, but there would also be a very important step towards transparency and equal access to disclosure information of possible contacts or presences of strange beings. Anomalous non-human should not be a privilege of a few, nor a few, but a right of all human beings, based on the right to freedom, based on the right to knowledge, the right to life, the right to work, the right to freedom, supported and backed by the people. By our constitutions. German, we must consider the impact of any such law on the economy. And in the tech industry, we know that space explorations and scientific studies, they have generally driven significant advances in different areas like medicine, communication, and computing. By intervening and investing in this research of non-human anomalous beings, we could open new opportunities. for the development of revolutionary technologies, creating jobs, stimulating economic growth in the world. It is our responsibility as human beings investigating and understanding our environment, even if that involves something
Focus more on the same
from the universe, by promoting a law that regulates scientific studies of the cosmos. Anomalous bodies, we protect and exercise our right to know the truth, guaranteeing equality of access to information and leaving a legacy of knowledge for our children. Children and future generations
shows responsibility
of everyone. Non-human animal bodies or objects should not be seen as sources of fear.
Dead
Towards a new understanding of our existence. Let me inform you. Let's unite our efforts and work together to promote laws, to support and classify special discoveries for declaration purposes. World Heritage, which will allow us to move towards an era of amazing discoveries. And above all, it will help us to be closer to understanding our place in the cosmos. Therefore, we call upon the President, to ministers of state, deputies, congressmen, legislators. They should propose a constitutional reform with explicit normative regulation in order to support scientific acts of discoveries to new knowledge of strange beings that arrive or historically existed for their analysis. Scientific study, so that humans know the science of secrecy by resorting to a constitutional right.
We must state as antecedents to this declaratory the lack of solid scientific evidence from a scientific point of view to support the claims of sighting of unknown beings, due to the lack of verifiable evidence and replication of results in research. In that sense, ufology is considered a conventional scientific discipline. Likewise, we can denote biased research, because there are critics without proven scientific knowledge. It is said that ufology is often biased by belief in the existence of non-human foreign bodies. That's why that lack of selective evidence search that supports your conclusion, but because these theories are spreading in the world. Primarily, it's due to the lack of international cooperation like Peru, Mexico, and other countries that convince the planet Earth. And we can implement the analysis of governmental secrecy here. Citizens of the world, the scientists, politicians,
authorities.
Thank you.
Greater international cooperation, should they do it? Of course we should do it. In investigations of sightings of non-human anomalous bodies, aiming to focus rigorously on the collection and the studies of scientific data, based on evidence and application of all the solid scientific methods to address legal gaps, it could be a great challenge in the formalization and legality of ufology that allow discovery, potentially the existence of non-human beings, be they historical or present, big or future. I call from here for reflection to all humans in the world. Don't we have the right to know the existence of other sciences, other intelligences? Why can we limit ourselves to the complete ignorance of a scientific investigation supported by our countries, by our laws and rules? Our children, they need to know the truth because they deserve to rewrite the history of humanity with realities of other intelligences, of other knowledge,
to balance the solid existence of man's knowledge, being so consecrate the universal right of, given the circumstance of this great event, of this meeting, really, it's like the audience, as if it were in public view, with the permission of our representative and those present, join me in 3 cheers. Long live humanity. Long live universal law, and long live knowledge.
Thanks a lot.
The lawyer wants to say that at this moment in Peru, these anomalous bodies, biologicals, are not protected.
Not only in Peru, but all over the world. In all the countries of the world where there are some non-human foreign bodies, because there is still a need to regulate a constitutional reform that is legitimately recognized to what life segment or criterion it belongs to these elements. That's why it's important that each of the countries take into account and reconsider taking a thorough study to be able to intervene in a constitutional reform. And from here, I should greet and congratulate to this chamber that really, if this
I have a beginning, an
it's
opening.
yours, we should continue with this desire to improve, to overcome certain restrictions of ignorance that we have in science.
But until very recently, it was very
skeptical that changed it.
Yes, like everyone, maybe we are skeptical about these new sightings, these new discoveries. I personally witnessed that the body they are going to present is identical, it's legitimate but unknown to human beings. That's why science should investigate, should delve deeper, to give it a re-registration of human history.
You are very wealthy, well-known lawyer from the Constitutionalist Peru, by the way. Are you saying you're going to make a proposal through Congress to change the laws?
According to the civil rights of our Peruvian society, we as professional groups, or as we particularly have as an institution, there is a legislative proposal, but there is also the order of the Bar Association of Peru. We are going to implement, if no parliamentarian
try to be seen.
I believe it.
Contrary. Today we are joined by great friends, 2 parliamentarians, those who dared to come here to really know, and I want to see it highlighted in this present. Congressmen, please. Our fathers of the nation, stand up to give a warm and welcoming hug.
Thank you very much, Counselor.
Collegiate Gutierrez and Collegiate Takuri. Sincerely, they are from the interior
country,
of...
but just like them. We all have to sweat the shirt to look for hope in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I want to introduce here the letter sent by the rector of the University of Peru.
Rector of the UN.
And it was signed by 11 professors from the university. This as the preamble to the presentation of the various top-level scientists. Let's listen to it.
National University of San Luis Gonzaga, year of unity, peace, and development. Statement from the San Luis Gonzaga University, ICA, on the case of the tridactylous dried bodies of Nazca, National University San Luis Gonzaga, UNSLG, Ica, Peru. Through his research team, he wants to address the scientific community at national and international level, as well as to the authorities and the general public, to inform about our study work in relation to the three-fingered, desiccated bodies with both human and reptilian characteristics that have been known in the media as the Nazca Mummies. These mummies were discovered in the provinces of Palpa and Nazca in the department of Ica, Peru. As time has passed, this has gained notoriety in the media, sparking controversy and debate. In this regard, we wish to clarify and communicate the following. On August 1, 2019, the National University San Luis Gonzaga, UNSLG, from Ica, Peru, received 4 desiccated bodies with both human and reptilian characteristics. These specimens were delivered by journalist Jorge Israel Mantilla Carvajal, exercising his right to withhold, and in compliance with the confidentiality principle of the Information Force. In accordance with Article 2, Paragraph 18 of the Constitution, Peru, the delivery of these bodies was carried out for the purpose of their conservative custody, and conducting investigations to clarify the authenticity of these desiccated specimens. The largest body, which we call Maria, is similar in size to a human being, but with notable anatomical differences. These include an elongated skull and the presence of 3 fingers on both hands and feet. The osteological and imaging analysis of the limbs shows structural harmony and congruence, with no evidence of phalange mutilation. Rather, it shows inflammatory sequelae in the dorsal column and feet, except in the case of the smallest body, which we have named Baby. The smaller bodies, which are approximately 60 centimeters in length, exhibit a morphological and anatomical structure that significantly differs from humans. The skin has morphological and histological characteristics that resemble those of reptiles, and both the hands and the body.
Like the feet, they are tridactyl.
But they have large skulls, and their bone and joint system in general noticeably differs from human anatomy, showing atypical traits and characteristics.
Unique and sui generis.
It's important to note that no rigid or metallic connection and support elements have been found in the joints throughout the body. Due to the uniqueness of these bodies and the marked anatomical and structural differences, more thorough investigations are needed to better understand their nature. 4. The metallurgical analysis carried out through scanning electron microscopy, SEM, a chest metal implant revealed an important finding. It was determined that the implant is made up of an alloy of multiple metals, with osmium being the predominant element. It's worth noting that osmium is an element that was officially discovered by Smith and Tennant and William Hyde Wollaston in the year 1803. Due to its electrical properties, osmium is used in the manufacture of some electronic devices and in the production of sensors. Additionally, the microscopic study through optical metallography. It has revealed the existence of a matrix of microstructures with microporosities and microinclusions in the implant. Apophia festae. However, despite advances pointing towards the confirmation that these bodies are real biological entities, and the presence of osmium in a metal implant clearly shows that more extensive studies are needed, due to the marked morphological and structural differences that have been detected through comparative anatomy. Therefore, it is important to note that these preliminary results are not conclusive. 6. During the period of custody and conservation of the mummified bodies, our research team, primarily made up of specialist doctors, it has faced multiple obstacles and difficulties in the proper execution and completion of the investigations. These challenges include the pandemic, budget constraints, lack of institutional support, lack of logistics, necessary teams and technology, as well as legal interferences from entities such as the Ministry of Culture and the Public Ministry, among others. Despite these obstacles, we managed to carry out imaging studies based on X-rays and CT scans, using resources provided by the researchers themselves and metallurgical studies with the support of the National University of Engineering. UNA. 7. It's important to note that at no point has the research team claimed that these bodies belong to extraterrestrial beings. In the course of our research, the most we can assert from a scientific perspective is that these are biological bodies of unknown origin that existed in past times, but not humans. Our approach is based on the study
Rigorous and the
of
search.
responses within the scope,
All the science, nothing more.
making speculative statements about the nature of these bodies. 8. It is important to emphasize that from the beginning, no member of the research team has been driven by media, political, economic, or any other interests. Our sole intention has been to conduct scientific research in order to rigorously determine if the desiccated three-fingered humanoid bodies are they authentic or forged, whether they are of biological origin or not, and unveil the mystery surrounding its authenticity. Our commitment has been the advancement of scientific knowledge and the search for objective answers about these specimens. Ultimately, as a result of our investigations, the research team has concluded that the desiccated bodies studied are typical of the plant, completely authentic from a biological perspective, and they show no signs of having been tampered with or assembled in any way. Our scientific approach has been rigorous, and the results contribute to the authenticity of these bodies. Letter signed by 11 professors from San Luis Gonzaga University of Ica, Peru.
I will join
Thank
Ica,
you.
Peru.
Greetings. See you next time.
It seems to me a strong statement from the university that tears down to any of the questions that have been made anywhere in the world, especially in those
where it has not been carried out
kind of research to determine whether it's authentic or not. They're most qualified, no doubt. They are the professors from the University of Island. They have had the bodies in their possession for 4 years. They have investigated them day and night so that it reaches people. This is the conclusion. Because it makes it, in my concept, absolutely overwhelming. Now I want to invite to the stage Mr. Thierry Jaime, without whose participation this would never have happened. When we first saw these images on the internet, the truth is that we think, like everyone, they were created, they weren't real. However, when we talked to Thierry over the phone, thanks to the intervention of a colleague, Fernando Correa, I was able to establish this communication with Thierry, and he emphatically told me, come to Peru, come to see them. Just convince yourself, not through the images. That's what I did. And like everyone who has approached these bodies, I came to the same conclusion. They are authentic. So I want to thank Thierry and myself for having collaborated with us, for having helped us, for having given us all the used research to make it known to everyone. Go ahead, Earth.
Many thanks. Maybe we can send the video directly. Well, gentlemen, deputies, congressmen, ladies and gentlemen, first, it's a great honor for me, the Institute in the Caribbean, to participate in this great event organized by the Deputy Sergio Gutierrez Luna and by Mr. Jaime Maussan in this temple of Mexican democracy to evoke in front of you the very controversial case of non-human mummies of Nazca found or supposedly found in an unknown site yet. Located north of the city of Nazca, on the south coast of Peru by the famous The Lion Roars to the Wind Rivera over the course of the year 2015, as far as we know. I wanted to clarify to the Inquiry Institute that we have nothing to do with ufology. We do archaeological investigations and just that. In October of 2016, I was contacted by a Peruvian journalist, Mr. Dante Rios Tambini, and a certain Paul Ronceros, that he had recovered a strange mummified bioptic objects. That one of his friends, the famous Mario, he had found near a site underground consisting of galleries and tunnels and halls on several levels and in very poor condition of conservation, and in this same site then had found several remains. Paul Roncero wanted to know if we could help him determine if his relics were authentic and if we could help him spread this information. And so it is when we have had the conviction that it could be a matter serious and real. We've decided to investigate in this case with two main objectives. First, spread the information so no one can hide it. And second, investigate the case and determine if these mummies were authentic or fake in the context of trafficking. Or it's a modern scam. We had told ourselves that if there was just a chance
for a million,
if all this is real, then it was worth the risk, considering the implications at all levels and enough historical, religious, philosophical, and so on and so on. January of 2017. He recharges Dr. Nieto, Minister of Culture, and a little later to the President of the Republic, Pedro Pablo Kuzen, to catch the attention of the Peruvian authorities about this possible finding and about the risk.
Highlights archaeological sites in the areas of
but in March of we have done in collaboration with my friend Alain Bonnet, and thanks to the support of 1,000 internet users, and do not funded and started to investigate
biological elements
guys that Mario had lent us. At this time it was about severed heads, and with big hands of 3 fingers and 6 levers. And a bit later in March, Mario
revealed in flesh and blood
us with complete bodies of the first one was named Albert by what we can see on the screen was named Josefina. See, 57 centimeters of height, holds 60, has a metal plate at the chest level, and we've discovered that it had 4 eggs in its abdomen, 3 eggs developing and 1 little egg information in a conduit. But this time we have met with Mr. Jaime Maussan, and we also met our friends from Galat.com, and thank to them we have friends of Yaya. A few weeks later, Mario discovered new bodies completely amazing. He spoke about Maria that we can see in the... Then Mario Vittoria showed us they all have their names: Victoria, Wawita, the family, and then much more. As of November 2018, thanks to Congressman Armando Villanueva, we have presented to the Peruvian Republic Congress all the analysis results that Jaime and with Gaia, it turns out that all the specialists who came in, that these bodies are indeed authentic. They are biological beings, and these beings were alive at one point in history. Finally, the laboratories concluded that these bodies were centuries and even millennia old. The DNA this being did not belong to the human species. For this reason, the labs will talk about at least 2 unknown species. I want to attend to this important point that none of the labs have mentioned aliens. Finally, in November of 2019, we convinced our friend Joyce Mantilla to our other friend Mario to deliver to the National University that we had studied, to allow the doctor Roger Zuniga and his team to conduct their own analysis and reach their own conclusions. We know that these mummies have generated a very strong global controversy. However, up to today's date, all the specialists who have taken the trouble to come to Peru to study them and conclude to the authenticity about these mummies. In return, and I'm sorry for them, all the specialists or pseudo-specialists, they claim that it's nothing more than a fraud. They never came to see us in Cusco or Ica to study these mummies. Before giving the word to the who have come here to present their conclusions, I would like to talk quickly to the retired but with a very important career. This is Dr. Chris Miles. In the United States, for example, it has created one of the most important paleontology museums in the country. And it has many high-level scientific publications. And he is very interested in this case of the mummies. He has studied several of these bodies, and here are his latest conclusions quickly. First of all, says Cliff, they are authentic mummies and have undergone a mummification process. Their bodies were subjected to at least 2 types of baths in order to preserve them better. The first was a kind of resin. Josephine, for example, clearly has drip lines. as well as an area where the first application didn't cover. We'll cover all the skin. We can now appreciate the skin. Diatomaceous earth was the second. In conclusion, I would like to invite the researchers from all around the world and that join the investigation. I'd also like the Peruvian authorities, such as the Ministry of Culture, to show the same open-mindedness and willingness to work hand in hand with specialists and scientists
from the uni.
Similarly, I hope that at the end of all the bulbs discovered return to the Nazca region. They have removed Peru. The Inkari Institute does not approve these traffics. We denounce and we hope these specimens finally return to the country. Just like this hybrid type mummy we are going to show you. There's a guy named Roberto from Nazca. He taught me a few days ago. Seems like the same species as Maria, and it was explosive and was a surprise for Jaime. I believe it's a great heritage, cultural of the nation and humanity. Could constitute one of the most important in history. In the end, I would like announce the launch of a big non-human from Nazca in the Nazca Palpa area for 2024. My team and I will be in the area from the Nazca zone for this big project. That's why it's needed, with the support of the population, of the local and regional political leaders, and a good collaboration with the Ministry of Culture. We can't do anything about it. I think this project could contribute to development. Tourist area of Nazca and Palpa, and that's what the Inkari Institute will be working on in the coming days, weeks and months. Finally, I would like to congratulate very strongly to the deputy and my friend Jaime Maussan for everything you're doing for the truth to come out. Many thanks. Long live Mexico and long live Peru.
And that's over there. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you.
And open, and it means...
Because there's so much more.
For me, the hottest point is the site, and if the place exists, we know that if it exists, there must be hundreds or thousands of these rooms. The iconography that we can find between the south of Lima and the north of Chile. In tissues, ceramics, the reptiles with tigers. In the cultures, Paracas and Nazca, I mean, we're talking about 1,000 years. Paracas is the 8th century BC. Nazca is the 18th century BC. Paracas is the 18th century BC. The Barasta, the site, the century. We're talking about 1,000 years of evolution, a possible contact between the locals of this area and the people from, we don't know where they're from, but it's evidence that it has existed, and there should be a process here. Perhaps thousands of specimens of...
There are two very important elements. One, something extraordinary is about to be spoken and revealed now. The possibility that it could be a hybrid Maria. Who could have made a hybrid with genes? Well, I'm not going to anticipate the experts, with different genes from different species?
For me, one of the ultimate tests with friends of and they have confirmed that no, they are human, and I believe that well, we
Definitely.
have used the professionalism of the world's top laboratories, and their conclusions are very clear. Similarly, it has been found footprints are not from Homo sapiens. We have the prints spiral when Maria has the footprints. Today you can traffic DNA or fingerprints. It's impossible.
The other is the metals they have, the implants these beings have in their body.
I don't know if he has seen it. At the start of the video, we show a specimen we've named Artemis. It has 3 eggs, 7 plates, and these, well.
That is who put it there.
That's the $1 million question.
If the obvious was not discovered until just 2 centuries ago, we're talking about more than 1,000 years, as all this is left to the imagination. We're not going to say what we shouldn't, but we leave these open, these queries, questions that will someday have to be answered.
Hopefully.
I congratulate you for all your work, and the Inkari Institute. You are not the only one. There is a whole team behind you that also deserve the reconciliation.
I take this opportunity you give me to greet my friends Eduard Valenzuela Gil, who is here in the room, and to Jose Casafranca Montes, the Vice President of the Institute, and I will boast Domingo Farfan, Alain Bonnet, who is watching us from France. Hello, Alain. And thank you very much, Jaime. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, before we continue with the evidence that is going to be presented that will leave us astonished, just as it happened at the first hearing, I want to invite our friend Claudio Yarto, from a very famous rapper, from another generation. Please give us a few words.
Yes. Very good afternoon to everyone. The Chamber of Deputies, thank you very much, Sergio. Thank you very much. Godfather Maussan, you brought me here to your conference. I'm not a scientist, but I want to tell you something. I've been lucky, right, since 1984. When I saw it for the first time in the Sea of the Universe, Godfather Maussan showed the photographs of Mr. Swiss-P.
And older, I used to say they are quite good for forging gas.
And one of the things I heard there, they say if you want to see omnis, the roof needs to be stopped again, right? And you know, since 1984, I've had many sightings. I had the opportunity to record thanks to technology. So many events are happening. I've already sent several to Master Tlax Calteco, but I've experienced all sorts of all kinds, and I have been able to register them from my home because technically I live in a home, 8th floor, where I have a vision like 280. And as they tell me, how does he kiss with flames? I say, I only do nambum.
And it was already.
So I say, no, well, looking at the ceiling, the truth is that I don't have any scientific proof. I have the EOS, and I really don't believe in UFOs. Because to believe is to doubt. I know they exist because they happen every day. I tell you, I see the Isla Sigua, I see
the Ajusco, and I see Santa Fe.
And it seems as if that was their outer ring row. Godfather, I have sent him several messages, Mr. Maussan tells me. Hey, but they look very small. I tell him, well, loosen the camera. John Claudio. And I tell you, I was lucky, actually, at the beginning of my career. Obviously, the songs that you knew were First, I think the captain, but the first one I launched is called The Planet, and technically it was the message that Millie Meyer was giving us through the program that I watched with Mr. Maussan about the ozone layer, about the destruction of the ozone layer. What was happening, that's what the song says. I'm talking about 60 minutes, because that's where I heard the whole message. And indeed, we are in an oasis in the universe. It seems to me that these gentlemen are just waiting for us to destroy ourselves, so that this race ends and they recover the rest because we keep polluting the planet. I sing to the planets. We've talked about wars, we've talked about pollution, we've talked about how we are wasting a 15 billion year cosmic evolution experience on absurd pollution destruction. Bellicose. What happens in the first second of the next cosmic year, as Mr. Sagan would say, what happens in the first second of the next cosmic year, because it will depend on what we do here and now with our intelligence and knowledge of his planet. Hurricanes, torrential rains, earthquakes, sexual infections, that's the response we're getting from the planet that humans are losing. The conditions are getting worse day by day. I keep rapping to addicts when we should be taking care of the ground we are stepping on. We are just encouraging ourselves. Don't you guys think about that? Doesn't that go through your head, or do they have the money to go to NASA and they build a house on the moon for you? Good afternoon.
Well, now, I give the floor, with the permission of the congressman, to the president, to the doctor, David Willie Ruiz Vela from the National University of Ica. He is a man who was the president of the Medical Association of Peru. It's part of the New York National Academy of Sciences, and he has all my respect. In the days I've known him, he's a man with a deep experience and knowledge, and I ask you to listen to him with great attention and care. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Please, let's start with the video. The first video. I am one. Well, I thank the organizers and you, legislators of a brother country, for opening your mind to disruptive elements that, for the vast majority, require stepping out of their comfort zone and view of the country, worldview. For others, maybe force their cheerful paradigmatic paralysis. The videos that will be played while I do the first part of my presentation are in tribute to more than 100 professionals who have worked hundreds of hours in about 6 years. The second video shows moments when I was assessing one of those biological entities, me as a selected doctor. That is, from the Latin denomination of my specialty, or as a forensic, which is from the Anglo-Saxon denomination, we prepare to investigate, to seek the truth behind the apparent, to give explanations to the forum, to a forum like this one, at this magnificent event. Science has a method. What is the scientific method? At this preliminary investigation stage, some of the data obtained are already conclusive. However, they require verification by other researchers in order to do the same analysis to get the same result. In my country, like in many other countries, there are no specialists in paleogenetics and in tomography by photon counting if possible. For the study, at least we need a tomograph of the highest possible resolution that will always give us more precision. That's why a multidisciplinary team and a broad budget are needed, significant still in many countries, including mine, Peru, with the outdated technology that we handle. If we were to give a fossilized fragment of a dinosaur to the scientific unit of the nation's prosecutor's office, they would report, "Who found stone?" Gentlemen, I'm not joking. This is how we are.
Subtitles
Because
made by the
chemicals
Mordor
would come
community.
out the minerals corresponding to a rock. And there is a huge difference between a rock and a fossil. The University of Ica is in charge, and the one who should be in charge. I'm sure she'll make the necessary alliances so that in a second stage she can continue with the investigations when the prosecutor's
And
office
subscribe
and the
to our
processes
channel.
to the researchers. Science, gentlemen, is beyond beliefs. Or no beliefs, matters of faith. They are out of place in this place. Here it has been shown with evidence about our research, and I will present something that will surprise you to those who can pay enough attention in the following minutes. Before proceeding, I want to make it clear that I studied high-definition scans performed by 3 scanners, and they match the body I examined. I even checked the locations of the micro-extractions required for the studies. Il somewhere says, sir, whether or not the evaluated body corresponds to a biological entity previously described on Earth, and as has already been explained, there's no evidence that it is a product of evolution of any species that ever existed at some point, nor that it currently exists, and it also does not correspond to any phylogenetic evolutionary process on this planet. I devoted tens of hours to ensure there is a total correspondence with the tomographic images, and I determined that they are not a product of human manufacturing. The average height of biological entities, the mature adults are 60 centimeters, the juveniles about 50 centimeters, and the infants 40 centimeters. All have the clavicle joined in front in the shape of a furcula, in articulated form. This structure resembles the furcula, except for one, the one we have named. What the team from the Union Josefina has been operated on, gentlemen, surgically operated, meaning there's been a surgical extraction and a spontaneous vital repair of bone continuity. Then I'll show you the pictures. What could be the shoulder blade in the back is attached and articulated to what should be understood as the spine. The backs of the hands are facing forward. They have 3 fingers on the hands and feet. That's why it's called tridactyl. With 3 phalanges on each one, each finger ends in a grip. Like us, our nail is on the terminal phalanx. In this case, the grip is after the terminal phalanx. The neck is mobile, but only so on one axis. That is, it can only move up and down. But, not from one side to another, but not from top to bottom. I'm referring to the joint between the first vertebra and the skull. The neck, additionally, is retractable, as in the entire spinal column, what we call abdomen. The neck area doesn't have a medullary canal, but there are nerve cords that come out of the skull in the posterior area and join to form what we call the spinal cord. Inside a secluded channel from the thorax, the absence of the jaw is verified, but they have a ventilatory opening and another for feeding. There's an opening of the ventilatory duct to food intake in the front part of the neck. The neck is connected to the floor. Middle of the skull, not like us. The satins, who have them on the back floor of the base of the skull. These beings have always been bipedal. That is, evolutionarily, they have not had a stage of using their forelimbs to mobilize like us. In our evolution, the eye sockets have not been... They have a C-shaped arc formed by 3 units, 2 lateral and 1 in the center, articulated. The last 2 ribs do not have the central part. These would be the lower floating ribs near.
There are the egg areas.
The eggs are in the belly, in different stages of progress in its macrotropic form, which are eggs that require a complementary contribution from the mother through feeding vessels And all of these start from a placental core. I will explain that tomography in a few seconds. Paleogenetics, a science that is forcing us to rewrite history in a similar way, like when sentences had to be rewritten in the United States. It seemed DNA technology for identification. Paleogenetics, in this case, has determined that it does not correspond to any species of our known world. That is, we look more like a bacterium than these beings. We can ensure that they lived on the Earth. We do not know for certain the reason for their disappearance, although we can suppose the hypothesis that they could not hold on to our known world. To make it clearer, they are beings from another world, but I refer to the world that paleontologists, anthropologists, and archaeologists have described to us. It's time to rethink the story as it is, and that new professionals with qualifications in these new sciences take over. I'm referring to paleogenetics, to photon count tomography. What I'll describe with images in a few minutes is the tremendous disruptive element that for many professionals, even the serious ones, they will respond with resistance and denial. To the presence of the images, please, the image, this is the video. There you see the images. They have some arrows that are goodbye, pointing to the lateral area of the anterior arc of the ribs. I said the ribs were 3 parts, 2 sides, and a front. That is, they have ribs all over the front area. Next. If you see the green arrows there, they are, that is, they don't have the front part. And the red arrow you guys are seeing in the image is pointing to the absence of the part of the anterior arch. At the top, where there were no eggs, there were 3 parts, side part and front part. Next image. Well, we are seeing there the area where the gains are, they part. What we have left of complementary nutritious elements that the mother gives to the eggs. But I have more extensions on this. You will see there with a green arrow an introduction to the egg in the shape of light blues. Another way of a twisted glass that is going to run behind this egg, and 2 red arrows that are fragments of the entry of food vessels towards those eggs. I want to tell you that if you open, that body is going to disintegrate like the ash of a cigarette. Because these structures are that dried up, they are that delicate. Next image. This is just an approach to what I already explained. That's another view of what I explained. Next, these are structures found on the surface. They are some sort of warty bodies, but they have nothing to do with warts, please. They are structures that have also been studied. This is the histological study, which is keratin. That's why it looks similar to a reptile. Those would be like the sizes. If you see some letters, the largest would be the adult, the middle child, the juveniles and the minors, but there are also intermediates. But this is the classification that we will tell you what we initially thought. We call ourselves Family 1. Next. Family 2 and Family 3. Actually, Family 3 were the eldest. The intermediates in Family 1, which was referred to as the most juvenile. And the Teresa family realizes adults have a sharper projection towards the center. I'm going to show a case. Remember, it's an adult. Next. This is Victoria, who is an adult. And you see in the furcula, on the inside, the tip, there isn't much projection. We are going to expand the Victoria area. Look, maybe for those who are not specialists do not realize it, but there is ossification there. Through here. It's not that they only took it out, but joined it for some pathology he had, and it has ossified again. Well, there we see on the neck, the red part that you see, which it goes down the neck. Those are the cords that begins to structure when there is a required channel that begins at the thorax, runs through the body and the back area. Next. Thanks. Goodbye. There is more difficult to see, but on the side where the clamp is not, but the other side, it's part of the neck, and a neck that was already there. It was already cut. Nobody on the team has destroyed anything. And a neck that was already cut was fragmented to create the samples.
Sand.
But what I'm showing with a clamp would be what we call a vertebra. And what's left visible, a bit more yellow, would be an intervertebral bearing, which extends spontaneously, and that's why the body is retractable.
Creating.
I'm not sure if you can see it. In the little figure below, I show what would be a human spinal column. Where are the vertebral bodies then? We are going to pass in the body, in the image. It's a drawn tomography. You can see those intervertebral bodies, which are actually bearings. And what we call those thin ones that you see between the bearings are what would be the vertebrae. Next, well, happily, you guys will have the edition of this book next year, which will be released first for the studious Mexicans, where they summarize about the thousands of hours worked in their beautiful country. Let's move on to the next presentation. That's how it is. There is another presentation on the same USB. Look, I'm going to tell you that what I'm going to show you is that last week they asked me if I wanted to witness it's a new group and that they were going to take a tomography of that new body. So I'm sharing with you what we just saw, which is no more researched than last week's. Let's go. Next, there it is. That's a photograph. All right, let's see another one. Another outdoor photograph.
More. The other one. Good.
Now I want to show you the tomographic parts. Please,
enjoy
the same image, but I'm going to put arrows on it to avoid getting lost in the image. Now let's look at the second one with arrows. The yellow arrows would be the ones pointing to the top of the oropharyngeal cavity, and the red arrows would be the ones pointing to the bottom of the oropharyngeal cavity. Remember, in the same image only that we have put arrows on it. Next.
All right, now.
In the small part that you see there, and we have enlarged in a box, the same thing that you see small and bigger. What you are seeing are some eggs have a differentiated structure because they are in different stages of gestation. And in black and white, there you can see it very well. And it's shown with little arrows that I'm also going to oscillate. Next image. The small arrows are a help because I can't have a pointer. That's why I've put on small arrows. The skyward arrow you see there on the side pointing out where almost all the vessels originate. And it's the modality of matrotropy. And the other arrows show how vessels enter the eggs. Next. That's where it ends then, right? The next thing? Well, that was all. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks.
Master, can these bodies be constructed?
There's new evidence
No,
of
but
intervention.
let's say I want to make one. Can I do it?
No,
There are technologies.
You know anyone else, huh? You know anyone else, because I'm telling you seriously.
And we've reviewed it with dozens of radiologist colleagues in my country. And then I told him, listen, no more. What about intelligence?
If it's artificial, they could do it with the imager, right? If it's
Yes,
artificial,
actually.
could they
This
do
is the
it?
picture, and those who will tell you, well, it could it not? But the body we are seeing, and also, obviously, we've seen the tomographic shot.
I heard him say that not even with millions of dollars could something like this be built.
Yes, because when we operate in reality, well, I don't know if the audience also knows that I'm a surgeon and a plastic surgeon. And we do reconstruction. I have done a lot of microsurgery and hand surgery in the last century.
It's always right.
The bone manipulation can be seen on the CT scan. It's always seen, always leaves a trace. Even if I've removed the fragment of containment used for surgery. And here there aren't even those arms.
I mean, people who say this is rigged because everyone in the world said this case was already solved, that it had been proven that they were venues that had been made.
Well, first they're extrapolating a puppet that was obviously grotesquely false. And from my theory, is a clumsy and going extrapolation.
I mean, it's not possible.
No, this can't be done.
Those who
Man,
claim
dude, you
they
have to
are
show it,
armed
buddy.
don't know what they're talking about.
Quite unprofessionally. I mean, I'm not going to say, but he wants to make yellow press just to gain audience, nothing more.
Here I'm going to make an indiscretion, Master. What happened to the bodies seized by the Ministry of Culture of Peru just a few weeks ago?
And the Ministry of Culture sent them to the Scientific Research Unit of the nation's prosecution. And as they don't have a CT scanner, all they had to do was cut open the brachies to later perform chemical tests and report that they are the salts of their equipment.
Subscribe.
So they destroyed the bodies?
And they can't do anything else.
It can't be anything else.
Why did they do it?
I suppose from their perspective that maybe they would want to look for active biological matter after 1,000 years of desiccation. Where you perhaps, I mean the general public doesn't know
That when a matter...
organic, it detaches and passes.
It's a dream.
Carbon, John. John is carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, which make us up. Carbon can remain as part of
chemical compounds in the
matter, but the oxygen goes into the air. The oxygen and nitrogen also go into the air. In most structures, that's what's going to happen. And of course, mostly the one that has more
speakers
of salts, like eggshell, then...
Could they use those arguments to say that they've already proven they're false?
They're definitely going to use it their
like
way,
Vanusa,
yes.
to say that they have already found out that they are dolls.
You can't say these are bodies that never had life, but I have shown the anatomical finesse I am demonstrating with the input of the eggs, the plexuses, that is irrefutably vital.
So the bodies you investigated are real?
Completely real. not manufactured, and there's no human intelligence
I
that
mean,
could accomplish
any
it.
effort in the opposite direction is useless.
It hurts us all. It really hurts us all, because it stops us from launching together as civilized human beings.
In other words, in that sense, the Ministry of Culture is acting against the people of Peru, not in favor.
Well, it seems like there is no culture there at all, right? Because what my country's Ministry of Culture should have done is ask the university, right? It's a university where research is produced, but what I've done is the procurator of the Ministry of Culture initiate a process, research for the researchers, then they don't allow them. You're too up, aren't you? It seems like the third world doesn't.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mario.
Well, now, Dr. Celestino Piotto, one of the greatest researchers, anthropologists in Argentina. There are species named after him, a true scientist, just a scientist, and he's going to make extraordinary revelations. Go ahead, Dr. Piotto.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. I am going to be very brief in what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to narrate, and then I am going to share the result with you. From what I researched in these Nazca mummy cases, I always want to clarify that I started my research strictly from the scientific method applied to medical science. Or rather, the scientific method where I don't stand a chance of varying the results that they give me, which are purely mathematical results. And they are not subjective, or whether I like them or not, I just have to adhere to the scientific method. So I resorted to skull radiography. And I introduced a series of angles, triangles, and polygons into them, of straight lines, of antero-posterior, etc. And I measured them. The result gave me a purely arithmetic answer. They gave me numbers. After that, I went as far as I had saved from the time I presented my thesis in the year 2001, where there is a series of distinct sexual dimorphisms in men and women from bones of the humerus and sacrum, which are different in men and women. So those indices that I had them severed in my tension, and I compared them with this. He gave me something very curious, which was not something totally opposite from one to another, from the human being to these beings that we do not know, but a very close area to it. So if you have ladders where they want to add one more step, the results of these beings perfectly indicated that I should add one more step to the evolutionary scale of man. And she also compared it with an evolution theory I made opposed to Darwin's, and call it the Guardian's theory. In the year 1980, then I got the same results. After that, I was able to finish then to here.
What kind of brain would there be in
These
theory?
people, and I'm already calling them people. Why? The final numerical result gives me that they are not individuals from the past or the present.
And sensations of the future.
So it means that these two beings, Maria, and these beings of about 60 centimeters in height, they should have existed in the future and not in the past, 1,000 years ago or 1,700 years apart. The scientific method can't answer me. Therefore, I can't either. Why do they appear in the past and don't have to appear in the future? When our current human species is disappearing and Maria would be, he is the last link of our human species that is devolving into a new species. Therefore, Maria would have part of her human genetics and part of her spiritual genetics. On the other hand, the lower beings would be completely from an evolution, a species that is going to come after us. In summary, they would be our descendants. I'm leaving this here. I don't want to keep talking. I want you to share it with me and think very carefully about what I've just told you. Nothing more.
Dr. Piotto, I mean, what you're telling us is that if you project the evolution of the human being into the future, we probably, according to what we discussed, in about 3 million years, we could become similar to those beings.
It's possible. Look, I'll give you an example. What can the lands of man's enemies be like at that time? These little beings, as I call them, they end up with a body that is no longer useful for survival. A body that is useless, cannot walk, cannot pick things up with the hand. Facing the world, if the body doesn't serve them, be in destinations too. But what do? They develop the brain much more to handle everything with the brain.
These beings, despite being small, have proportionally a bigger brain than us.
In proportion, they have a much larger brain than us relative to our body. When they are younger, their body's brain enlarges, meaning it becomes much more potent. Notice something. I made a projection of what is called the class polygon. It is a polygon that was used in 1850 in the Anthropologist Society of Paris with Paul Broca, who was the founder. They divide the cranial cavity into 4 parts. First the upper part, then the front or beginning. In other words, not frontal like us, but fallen backwards, like the dead. From the Bicomundo and Africa, from the Epithecus, isn't that right? But however, what could be a lack of development of the frontal lobe, they have sanctioned to the sides. That is, they have widened to the sides of the brain because it needed to grow more in the cavity that was in it. Then it gives me a brain base that in humans almost never changes the base of the skull. It's what moves the least in human evolution. And yet it gives us a pituitary cavity much larger than ours, which means a lot of hormonal activity. Then it gives the back of the skull a lot of activity.
Of the cerebellum of balance.
Right? Because they can't walk. Because those 3 fingers prevent them from walking and moving. And their hands prevent them from grabbing things. Then only with numeric measures and angles that they can.
He told me, I don't know where she died, but it was at 4 or 1.
It's not 5, but 2 plus 2 equals 4. We can see how these beings have grown in order to survive. And they are our descendants.
I mean, they must have come from somewhere else.
I believe that following the theory of human evolution from the African Pithecus, it seems to me that a very special phenomenon occurred at that time, 3 million years ago, where suddenly from the Pithecuentos, since Pithecuete began to inherit children, monkeys, and men. So it's not explained, and I don't believe that the Pithec is genetically capable enough to give birth to both monkeys and men. It must have been aided by a being I call a prior being, much more evolved than him, which gives him the human part. He could not have done it alone.
Well, this is revolutionary, Doctor.
That's why Pitheco couldn't have evolved 3 million years ago, and we still remain the same as we are. Someone should have been helped and he should have disappeared. And we don't disappear because of that previous being who gives the missing genetics.
I mean,
to the
apparently there is some kind of creation, of artificial creation.
No, it's not artificial creation, it's natural creation, mass natural creation.
But
it's
someone carried it out, that superior being.
And I would say that God,
then see you soon.
The superior senate, it is commanded by God. It's a person or another being that has a certain genetic capacity that the Pithecanthropus doesn't have. Therefore, it allows the Pitheco to give birth to monkey children and then to men. And they divide and reach dictatorship, and man is man and the monkey is the monkey we know. What is it like?
And then there are these beings that we will be in 3 million years.
I can't answer because the scientific method doesn't allow me.
See you later. You told me the first time I spoke to you, anyone who said these bodies were armed was a criminal.
Yes, well, what I told him was the following. The person who criticizes without having a scientific method and without having a bit of knowledge to oppose another knowledge and creating more science based on the critique of the method one presents is a very harmful person, because it's not just that they lack knowledge, but that it prevents people from growing and knowing, and the peoples who do not know end up making wars. So to avoid all those things, we need to study and study together everything and grow the challenge.
Thank you. Do you think it is important to investigate these beings?
Of course, I believe that this has to continue because they are biological beings that have not lived. They do not live, but they are going to live. And we want to see what we are going to leave them, what world we are leaving them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, teacher.
Bon appétit.
Well, now we go with the teachers from the University of Ica. Dr. Roger Zuniga, who has led the investigation from this university in the last 4 years. We must pay a very special recognition to Dr. Zuniga. He has paid for the investigations with his own money, called on friends, and done everything possible. In return, it has faced strong opposition, especially from the Ministry of Culture. He has even been accused, is legally accused for conducting this research. At this moment, the place where this is located, the yellow mummy is closed and it prevents them from continuing that investigation by the Ministry of Culture. Go ahead, Dr. Royo.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
Sorry, Dr. Zuniga.
I have the utmost honor to participate in this event, thanks to the kind invitation of Congressman Sergio Gutierrez Luna. I thank him, all the members, to the Congress and the Mexican people who give us the opportunity to say ours. Likewise, I greet the two congressmen from my country who are at this moment in this room. As Dr. Maussan said, this work we have done has been really hard, tenacious, with all the options and limitations that there were. Let's imitate this furniture. But before I start my presentation, I want to convey to you the greeting greeting, enthusiastic, fervent friend of the rector of the University of San Luis Gonzaga Rica, the Dr. Jorge Moreno de Tongue, who is currently giving us all the support. Likewise, greetings from the Vice Chancellors, from the Deans of the University Council, the university teachers, the non-teaching staff of the university, the students from the university community, and the people of Nazca and Palpa. So they receive greetings from everyone.
Salute.
We received, can you please pass? We received the first day on August of 2019, 4 bodies, as a journalist already said, isn't it? Reserving the right not to give information about their source. From this time, we began with disbelief, of course, to carry out
Recording is underway.
The first ones, investigations with the taking of radiographic samples. Thank you. To the collaboration, right, by a great doctor, a great teacher who has dedicated his entire life to radiography,
Dr. Mendoza with Sarret.
These initial images resulted in these bodies showing signs of being real. To deepen the investigations, resorting to our own resources, for the researchers with whom we form the university team, we bring this to Lima, perform the tomographies. Well, the reading of the tomographies confirmed to us that they were authentic bodies. Well, however, we received a series of criticisms. They didn't say these bodies were armed, right, with flame heads. You must have heard this before, right? With bones of children and birds. It was practically a reliquary. Then we move on to the next phase of the investigation, right? From a body named Albert, whom we have in pictures, we examined the entire upper surface of the body and we found absolutely no sign of tampering. There are no joints, no sutures, absolutely nothing. The body is normal, the skin is completely normal. Directed by, and we rather realized that the body was creatinized, right? Like that of reptiles. We noticed that the elongated head, as you have seen, does not have, the auricle does not have hair. The eyes are too big for the face. The small nasal septum, a small mouth, and then the whole body structure, completely emaciated. They end in 4 limbs with 3 fingers
at each end. Can you bear?
It's really amazing. It is dull. It is not noticeable. So to rule out the possibility that these bodies had been assembled, we took the samples. You can see the head. We took samples from the head. It is made, we realized that when we took the samples from the head to see if it was a llama or not, there was something moving inside the brain. From the Juranian vault, we approached towards that window that you can see in figure 3, and we found a strange body that seemed more encephalic, We took a small sample of this and then we sent to Mexico. They concluded in the laboratories of Mexico that they are tissues. These do not correspond to the human brain, nor to those of other animals. We are trying to find out which animal it could belong to. Well, you can go ahead. We also took the sample from the part of the chest, from the right rib. You will see in the images, in image number 1, that when cutting that part, we found an organ, apparently liver, and you can see the color. We also took a sample. That one is still being analyzed. And with this, we realized that these beings have brain mass and internal organs. The question immediately arises, which grave robber would dare to create a doll, assemble a doll with internal organs? It's impossible. If so, these organs would surely deteriorate immediately due to a series of factors. Also, in the right femur, we also made some cuts. We took the samples, and these 3 samples from the head. From the thorax and the femur, we sent to a friend university, a very prestigious university in Peru, the unique engineering university, which has, well, good laboratories, good equipment to investigate, to see whether these elements, or better said, these samples, belong to different beings. It turns out that the biochemical analysis resulted in the samples belonging to the same individual. This doesn't happen. Fortalist superior. It has been completely ruled out that these beings were armed. Can you please move on? Likewise, we referred to another specimen named Luisa. This specimen is characterized. Why? Because it dies eggs unlike the others. We assume it's a female who was in full reproduction with a bulging belly, which has been visualized, right? 3 objects that look like eggs, and detractors said these were armed stones, selected pebbles, introduced into the doll's belly. To rule out this possibility, we also did a test. We took the samples. First, we made a hole, a borehole, with the devices they use, dentists. We took the sample, and you can see that they had started to look for it. We took out the samples and also sent them to the engineering university to see if it indeed was of elements, no animals, right? Then, likewise, the analysis have yielded results, and that's what it's about, right? Of biological elements. So, completely ruled out that they are, well, eggs. You can see in the figures in image 2, right? The X-ray that was taken with that inlay, with that needle of ejectable introduced in part 3, the egg in disarray. Another image. There you can see the front view of the eggs, and also of this image. Yes, on the side, we shall say. Well, there you can even see a kind of this kind of from fiber to fiber, or I don't know, the stomach that holds the eggs, right? See you later. There we can clearly observe a tomographic reading, and when the tomographic cut was made, embryos were found in the eggs. You can see in those figures were embryos. That is, it was in the process of reproduction at the time of its death in the Isinaritza studies. There we have Victoria sitting the decapitated specimen. Here we have the tomography, but why do I try to show this for a very special, very till this, what would it say? Surprising. Let's move on to the next image. There you can see a being. That is a Wari fabric. Wari is a Peruvian Andean society that corresponds to the Middle Horizon. It's a city. It has been an expansive society, an imperialist company. In the iconography of this sculpture, which is Wari, there is a fabric, a headband that had the egg. I took your picture. There you can see a character with lightly bulging eyes, with a headache that seems like pain. We have our hands raised, always flexed, and he's squatting. But the most curious about this is that apparently the sewer is open. An object that is falling that would suggest being a creature, a being. You all see that in the stomach, don't you? There is an egg-like appearance. That is, this would show us that these beings, they were beings that reproduced through eggs. And, as already mentioned, they were beings. A viviparous egg, that is, no, the offspring is... It developed in the womb, hatched, and then the beings came out alive. It's a chimu textile with the same characteristics as this textile. It did. And you don't see the images I wanted. I want to show you one there. Well, the images. Thank you very much. Are you seeing it? Well, what I wanted to tell you is that the females have a plate on their chest, a pectoral plate. Unfortunately, you can't see the figures. This metal plate is in a very unusual situation. Why? Because all the females have this. I don't know why. We did the same, the cut. We take a sample of this mineral, send it to the engineering university, which is a university that has lots of experience and plenty of work done.
And these are the
high definition of high, with high precision, with which the samples were made, and it was discovered. 3 minerals, 1 copper, according to tin. That shows us that this is made in the wrong thing. And then a third element, which is osmium dioxide. You know, it was discovered, they already said, in 1803. Since it was discovered, it was only placed on the periodic table and never had a practical utility until the era of communications.
Osmium is
a very expensive, incredibly rare mineral in the world. And it is impossible for a scavenger, anyone. Osmium was used to forge a gadget, an artifact of this nature. Why? Because its acquisition is too difficult and expensive. Besides,
the device these beings have in their chest, it has a set of internal filaments. They are two parallel sheets, about 3 millimeters thick. The inside is empty, and precisely inside, it's a series of what I tell you, a sort of circuits that make us seem from that era. A rather special artifact. I asked them to the analyst of this mineral and said what this device was used for.
But I say minimally, right?
For location, if it's not about communication. Well, so time has beaten me. We have a set of iconographic evidences, not only in Peru, in America and in the world, that, well, so these beings represent three-fingered with the characteristics that these beings found in the university have. Thank you very much.
Dr. Roger Zuniga, it's clear that for you, there is no longer any doubt that these bodies are absolutely real.
Yes, completely. We are safe. Not only me, but the 11 of teachers who have dedicated themselves to research. And most of them are
There I say faith remains.
of authenticity. I brought this. This is a written statement for the meeting, isn't it? Out of the 11 researchers at the university, a statement for the world to know that we are facing a set of completely real beings. And we ask the global scientific community, universities, to private scientists who join this research process to reach the truth. And so do all the detractors who show us evidence that these bodies are forged.
So do you open the doors of the university to any university in the world, well, that is capable of this type of research?
To anyone, and with open terms. The university is small, modest, but big-hearted. And if you want to know the truth, very willingly.
All right.
It's going to deliver to the Congressman Sergio this statement so that it is spread around the world. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. I received from you and from the National University, San Luis Gonzaga, the Siturato Chechiasa. Mummies, called mummies, are desiccated beings. As mentioned before, it's signed and sealed by the university authorities. Logically, we will be visiting them. We are going to encourage ourselves to visit them there. Thank you very much.
One last question. Not only do you open the university to academic institutions, is there some kind of request to the people or institutions who want to contribute financial resources? Given that you really work with great limitations, would this help the people who are watching us in the world who wish to contribute?
Too much. It would be a great contribution to human knowledge.
How can they contact you? Can you give us an email?
Well, here I have a card. I don't know if anyone can...
No, please say that.
Let's see. My email is Roger Sua. 18 dot me with
rogersuasikelelate@gmail.com.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to introduce here, well, we are going to continue with the academics, just a letter. Because here in Mexico, the National Polytechnic Institute has joined this research to participate, and they made us the favor of to analyze the metal of the female we brought here 2 months ago, whose name is Clara, and the metal that he has in his chest, and I'm going to introduce you to. I have the result. The result of Dr. Meza, science doctor, who is one of the directors at the university from the National Polytechnic Institute, which endorses this research and whose interpretation is, I requested it from Master Fernando Estrada, and based on it, I present it here. It's very brief. Go ahead, please.
On October 25th of this year, scanning electron microscopy analysis was carried out in the engineering and metallurgy and materials laboratories of the National Polytechnic Institute to one of the non-human bodies. The plate analyzed mainly consists of silver and has traces of other metals. This suggests 2 theories. First, metallurgical theory. Silver is a metal that was difficult to extract in ancient times. And if we talk about an approximate age of 1,000 years, it's difficult to think of very high standard or high purity silver, which indicates that it must have been conducted by some intelligent being. 2, it had to be performed with technology that implies a level of development beyond anything available at those times.
3, when finding a silver plate inside the hands of some being.
Yes, you thus would have an advanced technological function. Well, silver is used for different technologies nowadays, and its new uses are being studied.
They found traces of
lithium, which in conjunction with silver could open up the theory of a technological implementation for some living being. Because I have learned that silicon is an important part of the body of various living beings. Silicon helps balance the mineralization of bones. It also plays an important role in improving skin texture, helping to balance cell formation and metabolism. Second theory of technological development. 1,000 years ago, there were traces of native silver, but it is very rare to find them and almost impossible with such high purity. It's even easier to find pieces of gold dated from that era than silver pieces, and the native silver found in nature will regularly be in alloys with copper and gold. The strange thing is that in this case, we do not have the mentioned metals. We're talking about practically pure silver, and that opens up the theory of technological development. Well, finding these peculiar characteristics in objects, relics, or findings is not something common on our planet. Secondly, the theory arises that this silver must have some use. One that is not much of a human issue in terms of current food or technological consumption. Traces of silver chloride were found, a chemical compound that is toxic to humans. The fact that there's a silver plate with silver chloride inside some being's skin, it talks to us about how precisely it is not something earthly or human that contains it. Because it would cause a serious intoxication, silver is not a metal that has antioxidative properties like, for example, current prosthetics that are made of platinum and titanium. Silver is a metal that produces oxides when it produces chlorides, and it can be contained within the skin of a terrestrial or human being because it would cause a severe poisoning. As a bonus, silver is the best conductor there is. In ancient times, it was believed that the best conductor there was gold, but it has recently been discovered that silver is the best natural conductor that exists.
Well, I think it didn't come out there, but the purity level of the silver is 95%, which is practically unknown in nature, and therefore it must have been made or manufactured by intelligent beings. Now let's go with Dr. Edgar Martin Hernandez from the University of Eka, who is going to talk to us specifically from one of the bodies that in a moment we will fully present the body of Maria. Go ahead.
Well, very good night to all. First of all, my thanks to the deputy, Sergio Gutierrez Luna, due to fuse limitation. The person speaking to you is a member of the research team at the National University San Luis González de Ica, Peru. I have a slide. Can you pass it to please? The way of introducing dimension, the region I come from is a region where multiple pre-Columbian cultures, such as the Nazca culture, the culture which settled, had the ability to perform skull trepanations, skull surgeries, of performing cranial trepanations, skull surgeries, where the skulls also come from, where the Nazca culture also settled with its impressive hydraulic engineering works with the enigmatic Nazca lines, and also in the area where fossil remains of prehistoric animals such as four-legged whales, dinosaurs, and recently it has been discovered. Advance your position, please. A specimen of a whale that has bin named Perucetus colossus. The slide, please. The one that is currently considered the largest living creature to have ever existed on the planet, which is the image you're looking at.
All right, I'm going to start from
mentioning that one of the arguments of the
scientific sureties say that we have
that someone assembled these specimens with triangle hands and feet. When tried to do
the image, next one, please.
When the fingers are taken off,
the hand, a foot, they leave traces. Do you feel it?
As the image is better, I was
arrows and crumbs. The next one.
And when this is done, they leave indelible marks. You see those steps, those gaps. That any hourly anatomist doesn't realize that they have been thus manufactured. It's a false tridactyl. The following. We have done some practical experiments. Please proceed to the next with hands and feet, and we have found the same results. The next slide, there you see the same, a human foot from with altered bones. Then we have extracted the first and fifth toe with their respective metatarsals, and a step is observed. And the next, so you can see the arrows. Next, there they are, the next one. Those arrows indicate the places where a void is noticed, where it's missing the bone corresponding to the finger. Next one, please. And we see a hand too. The next one, we see that when we extract these fingers, the thumb and the little finger, they leave traces, those steps or angles where it is observed that the fingers have come out. With this, I mean that it is impossible to carry out this procedure and to demonstrate with them that they are three-toed. Well, now I'm going to talk to you about the examination we've conducted on the specimen Maria's head. This specimen, it has two parts in the head, like humans, also skull and face, both parts divided by the cranial base. We have measured the volume that each of these parts has, skull and face, and we have found differences. In the normal adult human, the ratio of the volume of the skull and face is 1:1. As we see in the image, then for the volume calculation, I have used a formula that any student knows, multiplying the length by the width by the length, the 3 dimensions. In this tomography video, we have calculated diameters and lengths using a software that is Radion Daikon. With this software, we have calculated these diameters. For this dimension calculation, we did it in a technical scientific way using the resources of the craniometry, meaning we've used craniometric points that don't go into technical topics. But as you see there in the image, the skull,
it has 2 dimensions that are in green lines. One that goes
from front to back, which is the length, and another that goes from the base of the skull to the highest part of the head, which is the vertex point. And there are 2 dimensions there. Regarding the face, we also observe 2 dimensions. One dimension that goes from front to back, the length, and another one that goes in height from the base of the skull to the chin. The next, there we have 2 dimensions. We would need a third one to calculate the volume of each of these parts of the head. In the image, we are seeing the biparietal diameter that has been used to obtain the third dimension. And the calculation you're seeing there in the picture, this allows us to determine the volume. By applying the formula, we determine that the volume, the cranial capacity of the specimen Maria is 1,995 cubic centimeters. The following, likewise at the skull level, using the bizygomatic diameter, we already have the third dimension by making the corresponding calculation with the previously mentioned formula. We get a volume of 1,575 cubic centimeters for Maria's face. Then we see, comparing this dimension, that in the case of Mummy Maria, we have that the volume ratio of the face to the skull is 1 to 1.3. In the normal adult human, 1 by 1, the difference is 419 cubic centimeters. What does this mean? That there are 419 cubic centimeters of brain mass, greater or more than in humans. According to the criteria and principles of evolution, it means that this specimen must have been smarter than the human. I am not saying it. We're seeing it there with the evidence. Next. Well, we've also determined that this hypothesis, Maria, positioning of the jaw and maxilla, very forward. We have determined it also through calculations of graniometry, cephalometry of the CNA angle. It's determined that this angle in Maria is 108 degrees, when the normal for a regular adult human is only 82 degrees. Here, as we see, the angulation is extremely elevated, which gives us a diagnosis that the vaccinator had a marked prognathism or maxillary protrusion, which is a rare alteration in humans. This is not often seen in humans. It's very rare. It means that the entire jaw with the teeth and bone were very projected forward. Likewise, in the jaw, we find the same pattern of a bone dental formation. That is, he had a very forward projected jaw determined by the S&B angle. In the normal human adult is 80 degrees. However, here we had 90.4 degrees. Also extremely high. The diagnosis here also gives us how it was a marked prognathism or mandibular protrusion, meaning it was highly projected forward. This too is a finding uncommon in a normal human. The next one, but here's the interesting part. In Maria, both situations occurred. She had prognathism or maxillary and mandibular protrusion at the same time. That's why we say it has a biprotrusion, a double. And the other where strange, much more strange, is to have both. This is not normal in humans. In this image, we can also see that she had this projection. This is a 3D reconstruction based on tomographic images. The next, but we also detected in this Maria species that she had a protrusion, orbital and ocular, meaning they also had their eyeballs projected forward. In the radiographic image, we draw a line that goes from the upper orbital rim to the lower orbital rim, and notice that the eyeball is partly if we consider that the eyeball is considered in more than 95% by liquids, vitreous humor, aqueous humor, and it's about a SK mummy, so that eyeball must have been compressed and positioned
at the bottom of the orbit. Then we assume that
Maria's facial appearance could have been as seen in the image with the eyes.
Very projected from the front.
The following
this image shows the normal application of a globocopter,
especially within that mentioned tiny. We have made a mask on the front of the spine, and we have found some lesions in the column. The chest, in which we found lesions at the level of vertebra T2, T7, T12, And L1 lesions correspond to arthropathies. Our specialist radiologist, Dr. Daniel Mendoza, will explain it further. We also found that there exists at the level of the lumbar spine one less vertebra. We humans have 5 lumbar vertebrae. Here there are 4. Therefore, this ratio is also not normal in humans. We have many distinctive features in this specimen, so we assume it is not exactly inhuman. We've also done an analysis of the dental alveolar region, which means teeth and maxillary and mandibular alveoli, and we found interesting findings.
For example, are you watching
the first Dontorama made to this kind of... he did have 32 teeth like any normal adult. However, we have found that he had lost 4 teeth. He had lost 6 teeth and had 4 residual roots, which means that he only had the root of these 4 teeth. The lower molars, right, left, on the mandibular side from the jaw were absent. We also noticed that she had severe tooth wear, marked wear that is technically called
national dentistry?
That's the ending. We observe in the jaw area the loss of 3 teeth, but the strange thing here is that the residual bone has homogeneity and a regularity that is compatible with surgical work. Like the professional jobs that a dentist does today, right? It leaves the question, who did it, when he did it, how he did it, and with what instruments it was done. We have estimated the age of Maria using the method of the wear system. We determined that the age, according to this methodology, was 33 to 45 years old. The technical criteria are there in the device in the next. But we also did the age calculation based on the closure method of cranial sutures, basically the coronal sutures. And due to the closure of the structure at the lateral ends, according to this technique, Maria would be 35 years old.
To 40 years.
At 11, there are interesting findings. We see...
As for the bones that make up the tarsus, there is a perfect harmony and congruence with the bones of the metatarsal.
That's amongst
little bones. They
like
are
the roots of the toes. In the first images I showed, we noticed that if the bones of the foot are removed, they leave steps. As you see, there is no such steps. There is a perfect anatomical harmony. Similarly, there are 4 phalanges at the finger level. We humans have 3. Here it had 1 more phalange. Also, this is not normal in humans, right? The next one. And something even stranger is the shape of Maria's heel bone. We humans have in this calcaneus bone a strong prominence towards the back that forms the heel, which allows us to stay upright, even lean a little backwards. The case of this kind of Maria had a completely different heel. As you can see in the picture, it was rounded and had no prominence. Subsequently, which makes us assume that Maria couldn't stand upright like us, but leaned forward into space when standing or walking. Next, well, we don't have time to discuss implants. Dr. Roger already talked a bit, but the interesting thing here is that it has osmium, which has already been mentioned. It's an element that is used in sensual communication technology today. Well, to finish, I'm going to mention this sentence which reads like this.
Extraordinary hypothesis required.
Well, equally extraordinary evidence, and we as a research team believe we have it.
The following.
And now, to say goodbye, I'm going to say goodbye with this image. It's a carved stone which exists in Peru. It's in the Municipal Museum of Ambo, Huánuco, Peru, where you see an image of 2 crossed arms, 1 human with 5 fingers and 1 with 3. Then there is they have caused figures of a double helix and 3 points. The meaning is up to you.
Thank you.
Teacher, nothing more given all the differences. There are many similarities with sibling beings and there are many differences.
Yes, exactly. There are many differences. This makes us think that Maria could be a hybrid. A specimen has characteristics of one species and has characteristics of another species. That's technically called a hybrid.
Her bones were very robust.
And yes, very sturdy. For instance, there are more differences that I couldn't mention. For instance, at the level of the forearm, there is an average separation of 21 millimeters between the radius and the ulna, which is not usual in humans. This is more similar to the gorilla's arm. We have done a comparative anatomy with the gorilla, and it looks a lot like him.
How could a hybrid being be explained? Because this body is, 700 years old?
Yes, exactly. It's still inexplicable, which is why there's still much to investigate here.
Thank you so much, Master.
Thank you.
Well, let's go on. Edwin Zuniga, please, also from the University of Ica.
Good evening to everyone present, and once again, public thanks for having invited us and presenting part of the preliminary studies we have been conducting so far.
Can you see the screen? Well, I don't want to be...
This is repetitive, and moreover, time is pressing. I want to quickly go over the sampling procedures that were done on the dried specimens. Next. As already discussed, we have some specimens at the university. This one here is Albert, where samples were taken from 3 parts of the body. Body from the head, trunk, and limbs for later make a correlation to see if were they really armed bodies, as they said, or not. Next, to move a little faster. During the procedure, we used some materials and equipment. For instance, here we are using an implant engine designed to work in bone, not in tooth, not in stone. For performing bone surgeries, we use that to remove tissue in block, whether an epithelial plane, a muscular plane, and a bone plane, that is skin, muscle, and bone. Next, from the 3 regions I mentioned, during that procedure, we were surprised that when taking a block from the part of the trunk, which would be like an abdominal thorax segment, because it's connected, we found that it was hinted the species of an organ which position, texture, and color. It can indicate that it could be a liver, and we were surprised to find it in a good state of preservation, considering these are drier specimens from over 1,000 years old. Nicola was with you. To macroscopically see one of the little bones of the fingers that already had a fracture there, to see the composition. If we look at this image on the left, it's the little bone, which are very small pieces in the 60 centimeters beings. Imagine the tiny fingers, the levers are tiny. And, well, they are very delicate and had fractured. But we see in the image on the right, the composition they have is, it has a cover that would correspond to what is the epithelial tissue and the muscular tissue that is marked with the yellow arrow that wraps the bone, which has the structures of a long bone, as indicated by the blue arrow corresponding to the bone cortex and the red arrow corresponding to the bone cortex, to the marrow of the bone, which is the central part. Next. This already indicates to us
they are biological specimens.
Likewise, we proceeded to take samples from the other specimen named Josefina.
It has the same
similarity, but it has a peculiarity. As already mentioned, this is a specimen that had some strange objects in the belly, which apparently are eggs. So yeah, we took the samples to send them to the university they already mentioned, the National University of Engineering, for further evaluation. Next, a little faster. So we took from 3 parts, equally from the head, trunk, and limbs. Next. And the following here. Critics said that these were stones that had been placed inside these species to try to pretend that they were eggs. So we decided, using the same equipment that's designed, as I say, only to work on bone, not on teeth, which is a hard structure, nor on stone, which is a hard structure. But we were able to drill, of course, with some resistance in one of the eggs and in another one of the eggs. For example, there in the image, in the video, we are seeing that if we could drill,
the egg is approximately 15 millimeters.
The egg a bit higher and directed toward the left side of that specimen. We also did the drilling, and we noticed that it did not offer so much resistance. That is that in the same specimen it had 3 objects that we could say are eggs, which had different densities. This was also sent to the National University of Engineering for evaluation. This specimen, well, here we see a 3D reconstruction, so you can see better how the distribution of these eggs is within this specimen, from which samples were taken from 2 of these eggs. And we can also see there the different type of density these eggs have, which tells us that they are each in a different stage process. Next, please.
Another peculiarity of this specimen is that it has
a plate, as already mentioned, that has already been done in the studies and was also sent to the National Engineering University for the following studies. And that is the tomography that could not be seen to see the location of the chest plate. But what really caught our attention is in the cuts that were made. Next, please. The cuts that were made sagittally and axially, where we can appreciate that this plate is not dense, it's not a compact plate, but has a hollow structure in the center. What catches the attention is that for over 1,000 years, could make these types of plates, and now the expert, the weather to no one word. Many things that suddenly there will be an occasion for them themselves, with their academic authority, can explain it better. I'm just mentioning it. Next, but what really caught my attention is that when taking the sample from this metallic plate from the central part and when removing it, as we can see in the image on the left side of the monitor, indicated with a red arrow, is the space that is left when the plate is removed. And the central image is the inner face from the plate that came out with soft tissue attached to it. That is, at the time of removing the plate, it went out with tissue. Adhered, epithelial tissue adhered to the plate. This makes me assume that there is a kind of biointegration that is currently, with the advancement of technology and medicine, we can incorporate non-biological elements, inorganic elements into a living organism, and we can make it integrate. Such is the case with the use of dental implants to repair or replace a lost dental structure. But this is done with the help of technology, which involves a surface treatment of that metal. Then it is placed inside the bone, and it takes a while because it does not fuse with the bone overnight, but over a period of time, over a period of a few months. And it comes to, if we want to say, merge with this metallic structure, but at a cellular level. This process is called voice integration. And we can see in the image on the far right of the screen, those green arrows pointing at the bone that is attached to that metal structure, which would be the dental implant, which is a metal mostly composed of titanium, where this metal has been extracted from a living organism, from a living individual, and it has come out with parts of bone. We see in the upper green arrow that there is a large amount of bone, spongy, and we see the other 2 lower arrows pointing at white bone spicules that have fused. It has stuck to that implant. That's why when removing it comes out, dragging bone. It's the same thing that's happening with this plate. So this is another clue that leads us to suppose that these specimens, they have been alive in the time when the plate was put on them. And a process of biointegration had to happen for the epithelium of this being to fuse with this plate. Next. Thank you very much for the progress that we have made so far.
Irving, these analyses show that this metal, it must have been placed there by very advanced technology, by someone who knew what they were doing.
As I tell you, only in this season, for this millennium, we can do that. We put it to different restorative purposes. Even in other countries, chips are being installed. And by that time, we're talking about over 1,000 years ago. It must have been a species first. It had to be alive for that process of life integration with the plate to occur. In other words, the organism has integrated into that plate because it is not attached. And the other thing is that they had to be beings that have a superior intelligence to place and find the way of how
I deny that on the other
my
side.
bear is toxic, my bear causes irritation. If one breathes it, our nose bleeds, the lungs are affected. How can I put my bear there?
And I couldn't provide you with metallurgical matters, in my opinion, and that will be given by the metallurgical engineers. What I know is that there are many, many metallic structures that with current technology treatment, we can avoid those things like copper, which is now being used as a bactericide.
Is there any doubt about the authenticity of these bodies, the legitimacy of them being organic living beings?
Regarding authenticity, so far the research team, all the exams that we have been progressing rather confirms that these are beings authentic. There are doubts about many things like this here that is being found, where more research would need to be conducted. And every time we conduct studies and of
forum about something here,
limitations, because we are aware that
Peru, as an underdeveloped country, we don't have the technology
to conduct more in-depth studies. Seconds, but we keep finding things that keep surprising us as we continue our studies, even being here today, standing before you. And I am amazed by the presentation of many of the doctors that have preceded me, whom I don't know many of them. I'm just getting to know them here at this forum. And I'm very surprised from a scientific point of view from the studies they've done. I'm quite surprised. And every time I learn more about this, I mean, it's not that we didn't agree because others are coming. Other doctors from other countries who have only studied X-rays on their own, have studied on their own. And for example, what you also showed from another metal that was mostly silver, also that according to what the video says, is toxic. Every time more surprising things are found, and this really requires a more in-depth, detailed study. So the doctor has invited all institutions around the world that can join this project for conducting these types of deeper and more detailed investigations.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thanks for watching.
Well, I'm not sure if we're already connected with ICA in Peru. We're already connected. Let's go with journalist Joyce Mantilla. Go ahead, Joyce, please.
Thank you very much, Jaime. Good evening to all the audience in the Parliament of Mexico. Thanks to Deputy Sergio Gutierrez Luna, to you, Jaime Gonzalez, and to the entire Third Millennium and parliamentary team who have made this possible, this audience, and thank you for the invitation.
That I'm broadcasting from ICA.
From the nearly 2-century-old University of San Luis Gonzaga, place where the so-called Nazca Mummies, those desiccated bodies, are kept in custody and under investigation. The impressive, so fascinating, various professionals have been describing and accompany me. The rector of the university, Dr. Jorge Moreno, whom I welcome, as well as the audience in Mexico. How are you, doctor? How's it going?
Thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much. Well, in the end for me, he was a researcher, Jaime, with Maussan. And in the end for me, he was one of the most scientific ones I've ended up listening to.
It's simply amazing. Yes, they are lucky. What remains after this unjust process is declared null and void. The Ministry of Culture and the Prosecutor's Office against the academics are hindering the research work within the autonomous university. Now that the world is already aware of this,
The
and with
results that you have mentioned in your statement, that comes after.
I believe that the next step is the one.
We'll put
back to
anything
the
on a shred
standard
level.
role. I'm going to see
Your customization in our university, Julian. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you all for attending on the way.
Take a small rest, then we'll
I
sort it out.
swear, I wouldn't keep him,
Let's
bro.
proceed. Ready to move. Perhaps I'll be like that. I'm not sure. I'm content being myself. I don't know. I'm just like grateful for your presence. We are proceeding, sir, with very risky moves. Exactly. Yeah. It's still a bit Well, cold. so goodbye.
Until
And I
then,
will
we'll
see
wrap
you in
up.
12.7.
Thanks for your patience.
I feel like I'm dying.
Common
I feel like I'm
situation.
dying.
I
feel like I'm
believe the
dying.
great
Oh,
greeting I
thank
give
you
to all the
very
students.
much. Yes, that's great.
To
Okay, that
I'm
happened.
going to switch
I don't
off
know
the
if it's the
music
rest of the
for a
movie.
bit
It's
to
the
get a
red,
clear
blue, green.
idea of what I need to do.
their souls.
They are not human.
I'll have to double
We
down.
are not topographic. They are human beings.
So hopefully this is not a social issue. The doors are
For a
open
moment,
from now
we're
on,
sharing-
so that other researchers from other universities of different nationalities and specialties can get in touch with you
Why?
and
The
said,
word does, this time it's going to be
better
five,
stuff
and we're
for
going to
me.
have 2 partridges. Let's see.
Very well then. Greetings
Yes,
to
let's go.
all.
Yes,
Greetings
yes,
to
yes.
everyone. And a shout out to all my friends. Hello. So thank you very much with family, with friends, with your mother.
thank you very much, doctor. We also have here on our side, as part of this policy that is also starting the rectorate and the University of Ica. And there are other professionals from other study houses in Peru who are interested in researching. And we are going to pass. Thank you, doctor. Excuse me, we are going to continue with the lady doctor. See you next time. Malpartida Cavieles, she is a forensic expert from the Peruvian judicial power. Very good evening, Anushka.
Very good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. I thank God for being able to be here. I also thank Congressman Sergio Gutierrez for the invitation. And well, I'm going to...
And she would have had a report made very thorough to Maria, who is shining tonight in front of the world's eyes. So let's quickly move on to one of the most salient details that Anushka, who is also a professor at the Andean University of Cusco, has found.
Thank you so much, Joyce. I'll make it very brief. The report is quite extensive, but this is just a part of everything we have been able to see. In Maria's case, the most outstanding things that have been found, they were mainly at the maxillofacial group level. First, I'm going to show here, as you see on the screen, that sagittal size. We can clearly observe in a normal cortex, in a human being, the cortex is quite proportional, symmetrical singularity that we can see here in Maria. And another quite remarkable thing in this polite agitation is that the proportion, the thickness
And
is
good luck with
wall-like.
your spamming.
It's much more, we must say, wider, up to 2 or 3 times more.
The macreso.
It's much thicker.
Could any human, say, who was 10 feet, 7 feet, 2 inches, have such a thick skull?
In a normal standard, no.
No. One element
that's
to take
right.
into account.
And the morphology, the shape of Maria's skull, if we put the theory of the splints that have been used to shape, in her case, it looks quite even. There are no jolts, so we could be close to a natural
Natural. I mean,
conformation.
Maria Sotarame was not culturally modified, nor crushed, nor pressured to allege it, understand?
No, due to the regularity of the skull, no entries, no exits.
That tabak should be thin, thick, thin, if it's in the places where there was friction.
It is pretty irregular with ins and outs here. For example, another thing that is quite noticeable is the shape of the orbits. The size of the orbits is quite marked. In the case of Maria, in this image where the orbits are, we can observe the size is 54 millimeters. The approximate standard is 35 millimeters.
Even in the head of a 2-meter person,
It doesn't require
leave it at that.
information to such a high standard as we're finding here.
Wow, he entered but leaves without a floor. To the archaeologists, bioarchaeologists, and professionals of the scientific community in our country who say that these eye sockets have been enlarged with a chisel
Do
and
you
cut
have something?
wires.
We can observe quite regularity. There is a fairly proportional symmetry, uniform throughout the contours. There is no room for any kind of modification here.
So you agree with Professor Hernandez, who preceded us a while ago?
All right, if it is this image and the other radiographic images do not show structural alterations, there is no irregularity or segments that can denote an alteration.
Next, let's see. How interesting.
Here we are going to talk a little bit and quickly about the oral condition. I think the Dr. Hernandez has also referred it. The wear and tear is quite marked, especially on the top, upper front, on the top parts. It has extremely traumatic wear and tear. We're talking about a mummy that had a hiccup or a sex that had some sort of habit or used the previous part as a tool, but with two hard things, they have worn out to the extreme that has lost teeth, and the smaller ones continue to wear out. They are almost root remnants.
It was because of the amount of food he was eating and the times he was practicing his nutrition.
That he could have intake of up to 5 to 6 meals a day because
and that test is very
fairly
tough.
hard. And the marking that is much more prominent in the upper front, there is quite pronounced wear and tear, like to suggest that it has used its teeth as a tool. Here we can also observe the maxillary
I mean that jumping, protruding, outstanding maneuver.
That protrusion of both jaws that could be part
the
of
development or intake
from the diet.
But it has already been seen that he had the
because I had a previous mastication. Now, an odontogram was also done for Maria, this with the National Technical Standard. In this odontogram, all the area that you see here is
the
not
little
seen.
mark is blue.
The blue pieces are the teeth that Maria has lost. They are the pieces she lost in life. It has had its 30 intact pieces. It has quite noticeable and visible losses in the whole context. But there is also something quite striking, which is the loss at jaw level, the external pieces, and the edge pieces. Here we can see something quite marked. Firstly, here is the detail of the wear and tear, which are continuous. The wear and tear is well marked, but here in the lower front area of the jaw, there is a regularity where there has been the loss of the third and second molars.
What does this mean for the public who do not know about these details?
And probably Maria had a dentist.
I mean, we're dealing with two professionals. They'll soon you
different from Peru, which
about
were coming
something
out
of the same conclusions about something that in Manila there
who
is. Who has had an intervention with a specialist who would be a dentist of the time or an equivalent,
a dentist of the time, because the edge is quite uniform, it is quite smooth. There is a healing of a date of loss between 10 to 15 years, and more say.
And since I was a scientist, I studied them.
From the United States, Russia, or Japan. They could come and have a diagnosis similar to what you have.
I believe so, because
the rules are there, the images
same.
are there, the data is there.
All right.
Let's move on to the next.
Now, an anthropological scheme has been used
from a piece of lacquer
that gives us the configuration.
From the sex characterization in the skull.
That's what anthropologists around the world use to define characteristics.
The first images we see here correspond to females, and the last two images correspond to males. In the first two images, we compare Maria's skull
in the lower part, right?
At the bottom, at the back, at the part of the skull bump. We can observe here The development is almost imperceptible, and if I wanted to give an approximation, it would be a midpoint, neither feminine nor masculine. We know in the other context, the development of the mastoid processes is also quite wide and large, and I couldn't forget it.
It doesn't match at all with the ratings or human considerations of humanity.
Very big is very big. We are going to see the orbit ceiling.
That's on the
this enzyme,
on the
possibly
SCLC program.
it was
I think
with
it's
a
called,
record.
on the CLC program.
The threads don't match.
And paper.
They're quite flat. It's very marked. We have a development that I put a 0.4 more inclined to the masculine.
That does not fit into my point of view, and the public probably agrees 90%. None of those anthropological determinations.
The love, because it's quite sturdy. It's quite sturdy at the bottom. It also has a brand.
More education for males.
Thank you.
Regarding the hands and only a reach, it seems to me that there are other
And
professionals.
Maria's hands are quite long. They are quite. There are big
No,
ones.
apparently no kind of manipulation. Now, at the foot level, here I have an X-ray of one of Maria's feet, and we can see a disease. For example, here, if I wanted to mutilate a normal foot, I would have paralysis.
I don't know.
The milk thing is human. It would have the loss of the scaphoid. That is, if today it wanted to make a high mutilation, there would be a jump of the scaphoid.
On the red line already.
And on this side, at the bridge level,
Survive
we
some
only
point.
understood
It's
that we see that
clean.
this universe is entirely similar to this
The
finger.
base of the bones, when joining with the
Overheads
plants.
that fit perfectly one with the other.
I found the hand for action. I trust you, a little fool.
And another detail is the part of the visual solanaceae.
If you like it.
We have some quite noticeable brands, quite large, that usually are not found in the human body. Within the conclusions, and I say it very quickly, there is no morphological alteration in the orbits. All are regular. The orbits are 40% larger than the classic standards. There is no indication of mutilation at the level of the toes. The hands also, as we have already seen, are quite regular. There are no alterations. This mummy has a male genre approximation for the tonicity, thickness, protrusion of all her features, and yet she doesn't even surpass a feminine standard, and also exceeded my machinist standard.
Okay, it's not like a uniform.
Sturdy,
it's unique.
Quite sturdy.
Well, I would like something final. What's the latest from having briefly participated in this research that is just starting?
We have plenty of material. It's just the beginning. And there are many more tests that, due to time, sadly, we won't be able to
Probably
share.
at that.
There is material that can give an indicator. Ideal.
I want to thank Dr. Anustria very much.
Malpartida also to inform the public that the previous announcement, many.
Thank you very
Hello,
much.
Bloom.
He used the version of a conference stating that the
Department of Forensic Medicine of the Ministry of Accomplice. But Father, isn't it true that in Cali, DC, the Nazca bodies of that chaos were fake? It's not based on any report, just the words of that gentleman. And thanks to the intervention.
Thank you. Because I am on the other side. Okay. One more. These kinds of acts don't have.
What's happening to me? He has made a mess of the script, and it's clear from the images that he has analyzed the loose table.
We will be doing it.
In New York, the command center in Dallas, I'm going, and a mass, it could be a brain mass. This is the document that has been signed by Mr. Estrada. This has been achieved thanks to the transparency law. And in his own report, Mr. Estrada says that I'm going completely nuts.
Okay, then.
The bodies and food of those centers that have been tried to introduce, we aren't trying to introduce just in case, introducing them with science and diagnosis from specialists like Dr. Luz Perez, the part, and those that are being presented in the Mexican Parliament, and we are sustaining, while on the side of those who do not investigate. The evidence, they don't show expert opinions, and they don't make reports. That's a report that doesn't even have photos of the samples. They don't have the... yeah.
For a minute, I
How
would.
to vision
I ask
in
you
it
to show your expertise.
So I want you to know that we
You
have formed an institution called the International Research Institute of Peru. They are going to teach you to fight and learn this kind of research as Cadiz and Third Millennium and Raya Television have done. How many did I say, damn it? I mean, I think it's possible for me. And we are going to promote that knowledge. And to my people, the Peruvian Research Institute of Pernambuco, many thanks to all the public who follow us through the signal from the Congress of Mexico. And thank you, good night. So far, Luis Mantilla from the University San Luis Bonzan, Hybrid Water. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Thank you very much. There are only 2 speakers left. The biologist and then Ricardo Rangel, with a truly extraordinary discovery when analyzing the DNA of Maria. Over to you, Ricardo. Expert in precisely nothing.
Thank you, Jaime. Thank you very much. Good evening, good afternoon, good evening to all honorable members of the Chamber of Deputies, honorable members of the Presidium. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presence. Again, I present myself here freely and voluntarily to give my testimony and interpretation to the analysis from the sequences obtained from the isolated DNA an identified organism as 0003, as it has been colloquially identified with the name Maria. As already evidenced in documents presented earlier in this hearing, tissue samples have been taken from this organism to subject. According to a carbon-14 adaptation study, it has an approximate age of 1700 years. The gold standard for the analysis of deoxyribonucleic acid molecules from ancient samples, as well as its sequencing, are the NGS technologies or next generation sequencing. This technology allows us to perform a parallel application of millions of sequences from DNA fragments obtained from the ancient problem sample. Again, it's important to emphasize that in the genetic material obtained from ancient tissues, there is a high chance that it might be degraded and also contaminated with the DNA of microorganisms or people who have handled the specimen without the corresponding precautionary measures. Such events should be considered when interpreting the results. The tissue sample obtained from Maria's hand bone, which was identified as whole genome sequencing. And since 000, there it is. It underwent a DNA isolation protocol to later carry out massive sequencing on an Illumina brand device. Subsequently, the sequencing results were uploaded to the public platform of reading sequence files from the National Center for Biotechnology Information, from the United States National Library of Medicine. The results obtained were as follows. As a result of massive sequencing, 647 million were obtained. 789,366 reading sequences. A reading sequence is made up of 150 nucleotides in length. Subsequently, each of these reading sequences was automatically entered into the SRA tool, which resulted in the following phylogenetic constitution that we can observe on slide number 1. As can be seen, out of the 647 million reads, we were able to identify the
57.38 of them.
And only 2.62% of the reading sequences failed to be identified with the sequences of the, that is to say, 16 microns of reading. And that is, these 16 million sequences did not match living organisms known up to this moment. Out of this vast amount of identified DNA, that is 97.38 of reading sequences, a small percentage corresponds DNA of microorganisms that contaminated the sample or that are part of the skin microbiota, that is to say 2.13% of the reading sequences isolated from the sample obtained from this dissected specimen named Maria. Therefore, the remaining 95.25% corresponds to DNA obtained from the tissue of the organism in question. As you can observe, there is a descending distribution in the identified percentages as we move away from ancestral lineages in the phylogenetic tree, until observing the smallest percentage in the organism that is identified to genus and species. In other words, this reading sequence file tool fully identifies part of the genetic composition of the organism in question by paying attention to the final results. It stands out and powerfully draws attention that it is identified with 30.22% of the reading sequences with the genome of the human being that is Homo sapiens. But it also includes an anomalous taxonomic branch of the pan-genre, with 3.05% of the reading sequences obtained from the organism under study. As you can observe in slide number 2, which is a video to investigate this result further, the corona analysis was deployed. Can I show a pie-type sector graph in the percentage of reading sequences? This new diagram shows the representation of the percentage of the pan-indigenous genre, plus 2 hidden elements, which when you hover over them and double-click, the hidden information is displayed. Surprisingly, it was observed that the new information displayed corresponds to the identified reading sequences in 2 species of apes, which are identified by genus and species, regarding Pantroglodytes and Panpaniscus, that is chimpanzees and bonobos, respectively based on sibling species. They are asking me that, and due to time constraints, I'll shorten my speech a bit, but what I want to conclude, basically this organism contains sequences from 2 apes that come from Africa. That's very odd, and it's a quite similar proportion. Approximately 15% of them. Basically, this tells us effectively it is a hybrid, and there are comparisons in the following slides. You can also see there are experiments where it was possible to compare cells that have hybridized between monkey and Homo sapiens, which have been carried out in various studies. Universities having these hybrid cells in a way artificial, that is in an unnatural way. So therefore it's very important that we may have a way to generate evidence that allows us. How is it that these elements have been generated, because there is none until now? How is it that they managed 1700 years ago? Arriving here are hybrid organisms from 2 apes found in Africa, and on the other hand they have been able to hybridize with Homo sapiens, and on the other hand of completely unidentified reading sequences that could clearly give an answer to the phenotypic presence of the tip. So, well, with that, I want to end my participation, Jaime.
Ricardo, we are talking about a hybrid being. What was done?
Everything indicates then that as it was presented in the last slide, the distribution of reading sequences corresponds exactly to a process of artificial dilution, like what we have achieved with the current science by generating hybrid cells between monkeys. And being human...
we are talking about 2 types of monkeys.
That's right. Dr. Eugene McCarthy is an expert in hybridization. And he talks about the possibility of these two species being able to generate hybrids. It's possible that a hybrid of these two species was used together with humans to be able to generate this organism that we have been studying.
It would be four elements. Two monkeys, a chimp, the bonobo, and then the human, and something unknown.
And what? As we have seen,
in other words, it's not a simple hybridization.
No, it's not a simple vibration. It's a quite complex vibration that must have
artificial.
Been
How
by
can one
particular
perform an
situation.
artificial hybridization 700 years ago?
That's something I believe, which is the most important aspect of these kinds of meetings, as inviting
all the researchers then to what.
Let's unite. I think that's what should unite us, and not the wars. These kinds of questions, because we definitely have a big challenge to solve.
What you are revealing is transcendental.
It's very important, Jaime.
We see a being that seems human and is not human, that has many characteristics similar to us, and many that don't look alike. Now it's three-fingered. The fingers are huge. The fingerprints are different. It has monkey bones, very robust.
That's right.
All of this is crucial.
Yes. In fact, as we just heard, the measures could seem to a male gender, but, well, comparisons should rather be made between those types of species, between females and males.
It's not Maria, but Mario.
There can be a possibility.
Yes, well, I think this discovery is very important. We have a hybrid being. We have Fota beings. Apparently, they are more evolved than us. They have greater capacity. They are smaller. We are facing something truly extraordinary.
That's right. And that's why the reiteration to the scientific community, not to judge without first not having studied these elements, I think it's very important. That we have the opportunity and the open mind to carry out a more profound study.
Thank you very much, Master Ricardo Arrequeda. Now to conclude, even though Dr. David Ruiz got a bit ahead of me, we are going to introduce the new species. It's a creature that they sent me a video. I went there. I was able to get it to deliver it to the University of Ica.
Dr. Daniel Mendoza is missing. Which one? Daniel Mendoza. Yes.
Well, so we got this CD to hand it over to the university, otherwise it could have been lost. Honestly, the first time I saw this being, it seemed too much. I mean, after having presented the two beings, and that we had generated such controversy, I said, when this is presented, well, it's going to be even bigger because its features are even stranger than those of anyone else. So we're already talking about a third species. We decided to take it then along with Dr. Roger Zuniga to an X-ray laboratory with Dr. Mendoza, and he performed, and I'm going to ask the Dr. Mendoza, who please explain the X-ray results he did in his own laboratory. Go ahead, Doctor.
Neurons circuitus, do you know? Mexican federal deputies, distinguished and honorable congressmen from my country, Peru. The memo is going to be left, isn't it? And it already has concurrency. During the full accomplished COVID-19 pandemic, they requested my services.
But tomorrow,
to interpret within my limitation. So when taking X-ray, they are unknown specimens. I took them and I tried to interpret, and they can pass the first slide for later. The first images Well, see, this is practically the last one, the one that's different.
Being Dr. Gonzalez,
is it an unknown specimen that has a small head, a small cervical column, your cervicodorsal column, his pelvis, and some foreign bodies in the Peruvian cavity? There are appendages on the dorsal, cervical-dorsal part that seem like fins. And undoubtedly, the long bones present at the center, a radiolucent image that corresponds to the bone marrow by substitute.com. That the bone marrow is the factory of the figurative elements of the blood, the producers of the erythrocytes that are going to form the red blood cells individually. This specimen, it has been a biological being who has definitely lived. On the other hand, these limbs have joints, and I can see from here that they also have 3 fingers. But this is the last specimen they brought to my study. There you have it. It's a specimen that has lived. It's the biological one. They can distinguish
you in the long bones, the parts
the
in
medullary center and the cortical parts are well defined.
Grab a small
and
wisp.
those foreign bodies, which tomographies have already said correspond to eggs, but just by looking at the X-ray, I can say that there are some foreign bodies, radio in popcorn, or shapes or buoys with well-defined contours only. That's the way it is. The other device to start, I believe, that's the specimen they brought me, and then me, and also the radiographies. I am just going to complete the X-ray, that's all we take. Because it's already been tackled.
The Olvoronic themes.
The external they can pass.
Go.
This is the title of my emotion that I bring to all of your consideration. Conventional radiographic studies of species from Colosseas in the south of Peru. That's my role. I am a doctor, radiologist, retired professor at the Faculty of Medicine of Santiago de Gonzaga University, Laica. Second and peaceful. This is a panoramic view of a whole specimen. Luisa's biography is marked by her discoverers. Here we can see the heads, the trunk, which is practically joined with the abdomen and the pelvis. It's an anatomical segment. Everything like Operiano abdomen. And the segment of the neck, the shoulder. Terminal co-experience is required. From this part, we always take shots from the front and the side, the left of the front photograph and the one below. He struggles to see the side view. From here, we can just see that it's a small skull. Thank you. That skull is divided into two fundamental parts, the vault and the cranial base. The bomb, it's here. You all can see, which is made up of the outer table and the inner table. And between the outer table and the inner table, there is a radiolucent image that the marrow, or rather just looking at the skull, we can say this Pezzini was corresponded to a biological being. Others may proceed. Now there's the head segment, the skull cap and base. While the dome, what it was saying was the external table and the internal table. And the base of the skull subdivided into the anterior floor, middle floor, and posterior floor. What catches my attention is that on the middle floor, where the Turkish saddle usually exists, it is not so. There is no Turkish chair, however, in the massive marks and the official. There is a prominence in the shape of a peak and a cavity, or of her English. Underneath the cranial vault, the cerebral convolutions can be hinted at
that are embedded in the internal board.
We can see fish passing through the cervical concrete. You see the vertebrae well defined, supported by the intervertebral spaces that currently correspond to the intervertebral discs. I notice it's positive. And if I've caught it now here, I say they've hurt me.
Well, we can see
the ribs, which are horizontally aligned,
that start from the same column.
And all this anatomical concrete looks like a barrel because the ribs are horizontalized from top to bottom. And on the upper part in the chest, we can see that metallic artifact, a bar and discs on the sides. In the shoulder segment, we can see the scapula, the clavicle, and the epiphysis of the human humerus. In the humerus, you can see that the medullary is well defined, separated from the corticals. We continue with the elbow, which is directly connected to another bone. It appears to be the radius, and there is no ulna, only one bone. We move on to the other element. His hands, that among fingers only a field. It is done, do not make anything, take care of it. If you allow me a few minutes to proceed, there's only one bone in the lower limbs. The homologue corresponds to the tibia. There's no fibula, only 3 toes in the foot. Next deposit. In summary, in this specimen, there are, in the upper and lower limbs, marrow, that is, which corresponded to my son. Alvarez, the Alvarez cement has the same characteristics. In the osteoarticular system, we can also say that it corresponds
Let's go.
to a
Circus! Live being biological.
The interview proceeds further up.
It is Ish Subkawe Salihane.
It's gourmet there. He fights if he pleases.
The other one is positive. It also has a segment of a barrel-shaped, similar eternity.
That was the previous.
Is the other thing positive?
It also has 3 fingers. Miracle of positive. And the lower limbs also have tragedies in the foot. And the honorable judges as well. The 3. And they are barked. The other day I spent the time. This is another element they call Victoria Montesano, decapitated in long bones. You can also see
with precision that it has met,
or in other words, has been a living being. Look at you. This is the specimen that was baptized as Maria. They have already talked about her. She has a large head, part of your neck. And these upper terminals, 3 fingers on the column, on another deep device. In a dorsal colony, there are lesions in D4, D7, and L1. So we can presume that this specimen has had diseases, possibly inflammatory diseases. And within inflammatory diseases, the one we see currently in modern life is tuberculosis. Positive note, no. 3 tertiary speakers and 3 fingers, and each finger with 3 speakers. They're between the joint of the phalangeal tarsals. There are some lesions, radionuclide, apparently consequences of chronic inflammatory processes. Another device to finish. I want to show you this picture in brief. In modern times, in the 70s and 80s, I was taken to the radiology service when I was working at the hospital to a lady who was about 40 years old. Went to an outpatient clinic, and the doctor who observed her was knitting and only had 3 fingers. He took it to Revisec. I took the biographies, and there are the biographies. Patient who has 3 too, just that. And in the wrist, the carpal bones are consolidated, but it did have the ulna and the radius. That's a modern radiography taken in the 70s, 80s, thereabouts.
Thank you very much.
It is also concludes from the authenticity of the bodies, there is no doubt.
Some, in my opinion, they are natural.
Regarding the new body, what can you tell us to the last body that was conducted?
I'm not being right.
It's also natural. And it also has 4 eggs, but it is very strange. It has
subtitles created by the Amara.org community.
Lungs and has only 1 spine.
Mr. Mayor, the week has started.
Well, here on Earth there are salamanders that are longless and also have no ribs, right? It would be something similar, something different from the others. We're talking about a new species then.
You are amazing.
Well, thank you very much, Maestro.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maussan. Next, the deputy will give the conclusions. Please, Deputy Gutierrez Luna.
Thank you very much to everyone. We have concluded, I believe, with great success this second hearing about phenomena in different parts of the world, notably from Peru, analyzing, discussing, debating from the first public hearing 2 months ago, and to notably thank a man who has never stopped trying to prove himself.
To demonstrate this phenomenon.
Jaime Maussan. I ask for applause for Jaime Maussan. Thank you, Jaime. This is the town's house. Here all ideas will always be welcome. All the proposals, to discuss them, to listen to them, to agree or not. That's the nature of the House of Representatives. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Bye.